And the best person to teach this is, of course, Andy Christopher, and he's here with us. We will start with him very soon as well. So let me just bring him on board. Hey, Andy.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hey, thank you.
Hey,
All good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's pretty early over here, but I think it'll be fun.
Yeah,
We'll have
I
a
can
good time.
imagine. I can imagine. Well, thank you so much for your time, for joining this event and teaching the five render. So before moving ahead, I'd like to ask if you can just cover in 2 minutes what we're going to learn in this 5 hours.
Yeah, so I think it's actually 3 hours, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
3 hours.
um, yeah, so basically what we'll be talking about is creating a stylized scene. The idea is I'll be sharing a scene with everybody, free download. You'll import and we'll work on this together. You know, this is a workshop. I'm not just going to be lecturing nonstop. So we're going to basically make a project look like a handcrafted architectural model, kind of like a maquette style. And we'll also do an exploded axon because that's a very popular visualization technique. So it's kind of like a departure from the typical realistic stuff that I always talk about because like I always talk about that. It's nice to kind of focus on the diagrams and kind of like the more conceptual approach to this because D5 can do conceptual and photorealism. And I feel like a lot of people forget about the conceptual stuff, and that's so important in the architectural process.
Incredible, incredible. Well, thank you so much for this brief. I'll go ahead and introduce some of the upcoming events in the PA Academy as normal, as our previous events. Then I'll get back to you and hand over the stage so you can start screen sharing and let get into the workshop. So give me a 5 second. Okay. I hope by now you can see the screen. Just 1 second. Okay. So welcome back, guys. It's good to see you again. Yesterday we had again another event with Sanjay Puri. If you come to our upcoming courses section, in this upcoming section, you will see the future events. Today we will have another event after Andy. Prabhat from Zaha Hadid Architects will join for a curvilinear concept workshop. It's a member-only workshop. If you are a member, you'll be joining for free. Next weekend, we have multimodal architecture, context creation with AI with Carlos Bannon. Carlos Bannon is back with the fifth workshop in the platform. So if you're interested, make sure to check that out. And the weekend after that, we have Snaptrude in the platform, where Taylor will showcase architectural intelligence and the AI feature that they have in the platform with the software they have built in. We will have design tech talk as well, including 4 lectures. Make sure to check all the speakers, and if you're interested to check, make sure to register. We have reverse modeling with Cosimo, again, an AI-inspired architecture with Midjourney, Crea, Rhino, and all sort of AI softwares that you can imagine. AI-powered design ideation with Midjourney and Nano Banana will be taught again by Mohamed Fandi, another AI architect and artist, Egyptian, which has his own unique style as well. The weekend after that, we have again another member-only workshop with Filippo Nassetti, an ex-Zaha Hadid design architect, but also who has been working a lot on the wearables, on the body architecture, and all sort of designs like this. So check that out. And Subti Intelligence, again, is another workshop with Sarah Suabach joining from Zaha Hadid Architects, showcasing the capabilities of Rhino Subti and AI rendering with it. And Run Diffusion is also another workshop that we're having end-to-end AI visualization with Andy and Jun Chao. So that's basically it. So we have a discount code for this weekend. It's October 35. If you want to join if you want to watch any previous workshop, you can just use this discount code. And if you are a member, you will get a 50% discount on using this coupon. Well, there's also Discord channel that we invite you guys to start writing in here in regards to this workshop as well. If you have anything to share, make sure to share it in here. But also Zoom chat section will be active as well. That's it from my side. Let's get back to Andy so we can start the session and go ahead with the workshop.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. Perfect.
Yes, there you are.
All right, awesome. All right, hey everybody. Welcome to our PA Academy workshop, 3D stylized renders and diagrams with D5 Render. So for those who don't know me, my name is Andy Crisoforo. I am a senior applied technology specialist and associate principal at KPF. I'm a licensed architect. I have my own training platform called the ArcViz Academy, and I've been in the XR and AI space for a very, very long time. And because of, my background of understanding all this nerdy stuff and being an educator, I started YouTubing for about a year now. So I'm hoping some of you guys in the comments have actually seen me before, familiar with my content. And it's basically all about, spreading the word about, the amazing capabilities of D5, as well as keeping up with all the craziness with AI, because it literally feels like every other day there's something new to be covered. So what we're going to talk about today, I've got a little presentation, just a quick lecture, just to kind of go over everything, talk a little bit about visualization trends. Then we'll get into our hands-on workshop. That'll be fun. I'll be sharing files with you guys so you can follow along. So make sure you've got D5 ready and you're on your working computer, of course. And then Jingjing Wu will hop on later and talk about getting EDU licenses. They're free and that setup. So what we're going to be doing
Before
today
you move
is
ahead, Andy, I also shared your YouTube link in the chat. For those who are interested, they can go and give a subscribe to Andy on YouTube.
oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about creating a stylized exploded isometric diagram. And basically, it's a very popular technique in the world of architecture. And like I was saying earlier, the focus is more on the stylized side of rendering. D5 can obviously handle photorealism, no problem at all. But we're always talking about that. And I feel like there's not enough content around the conceptual stuff that D5 can also do well. So this is the project, essentially the end goal for us that we want to make. This is the house we'll be working with. Obviously I'll be sharing that. But again, diagrams are so important, especially from the architecture point of view, just because it's the starting point of your project. Is how you like share your ideas with the clients. We'll talk a little bit about why showing highly polished renderings early on can be a little bit scary for a client, but this is the end goal. Okay. So what we've been seeing in the past, what we've been seeing recently is now that it's so easy to create, photorealistic renderings, there's also been kind of like a drop in the conceptual diagrams scene that I grew up learning while I was in architecture school. And 10, 15 years ago, I feel like we saw a lot more stylized images, and I feel like that's kind of gone away. So I want to bring that back. So we're going to be focusing on diagrams, presenting our ideas, what makes a strong diagram, what makes a bad diagram. So we'll be talking about that. So just to see what everyone knows, I'm curious, does anybody know some pros and cons of a stylized rendering versus realistic, or why would we use stylized over realistic? It's actually kind of interesting from a psychological point of view. So I'll give you guys a second if you want to put it in the chat. But why would we ever use stylized renderings? It's really yeah, it can be confusing. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Irina. So basically, what happens is, when you start a project, yeah, flexibility is a great one. Yeah, check it these. You can focus on specific things like light and shadow, ideas generation. Yes. So we love stylized renderings because exactly, Naima. It simplifies the main idea and it keeps things loose and gestural, right? When we start presenting, your first design meeting, things with solidified ideas of like materiality and lighting and space, it's basically like you went from like 0 to 60 in no time at all, and there was no creative process. And that could be a little scary for clients. Like they do want to start and do this process with you. And if you're, showing them this over this, the forms of the house might not be clear. They're going to be focusing on the rendering quality. They're going to be focusing on, oh, is this the right color? And they're not focusing on the things that actually matter, like the form of the project and just the overall design moves. So keeping it simple, stylized, for a sake of like efficiency point of view, it helps you generate options faster because you're not worried about perfecting the lighting and perfecting the materials for every single option. It's very easy to quickly do all this, like applying the materials, applying, the stylized assets. And that's why it's really easy to use, and you should be using it. I feel like this is like a lost art, especially like handcrafted models. Um, Nothing wrong with 3D printing and everything, but I think there's like there's a beauty to a handcrafted model that you spend time on, time and blood, from cutting yourself, where you actually understand like every square inch of the project and you see it from all these different angles. It gives you that like intimate moment with your project that you don't often get from a 3D print or just like orbiting around in Rhino and all that. So on that note, I will say I've set up the workshop in a way where you don't need to worry about having like Rhino or Revit or SketchUp installed or anything. We'll do a direct import. I already have the files ready for you. But I did want to drop this here because this comes up all the time, especially in our work where people, jump the gun and, you just start showing these finished renderings and the client's like, oh, where did this come from? We never talked about this. So although it's pretty and beautiful, it has a time and place. Okay. This is good for like schematic design, design development, construction documents. This is good for early conceptual work. So in terms of like our overall workflow, we don't need to worry too much about model setup. I've already done that. We're going to be going straight into importing into D5 render. We'll talk about organizing our scene. We'll do our light setups, material setups. We'll set up the camera to give it that isometric look. We'll do, a stylized pass, make sure everything looks nice and artful. And we'll do a simple, phasing animation that's going to help us get that exploded look. And we'll be able to export out renderings. And so the fun part of this workshop, kind of when I was designing it, is because of like the stylized nature. I don't really want you to follow me 100% of the time. You might not agree with some of my design decisions and all that. So what I want to do is, as we're working on this, we'll have like little, I'm calling them checkpoints, where it's like a little break, but it's like a working break, just so everybody can catch up. Because what I found when I go to workshops and attend courses, it drives me nuts when you're trying to follow the instructor and you're still working, and then they move on to the next thing, and you basically fall behind, and then you lose interest, and then you're sitting there for 3 hours. I don't want that. So we're gonna have little checkpoints. A couple of minute breaks where we're just like catching up on anything I said or did. I can answer some questions at that point. Again, I don't want to do like all the questions at the end with our Q&A. We will still have an overall Q&A, but like when I'm talking about materials and that setup, it's okay to drop a question in there. I don't want to lecture for 3 hours. That's like my nightmare. I do want this to be like a collaborative process. So if you have something, to contribute to the conversation, something funny, feel free to drop that in. But we will do these checkpoints, okay? So don't feel like you need to be 100% following and, pressing everything, we will have little pauses. Okay. I hope you guys like that idea. It's a new thing I'm trying today, but I think it's going to be good. All right. So then we'll talk a little bit more about, what's going to go on with this workflow. So there's a bunch of different components. We'll be we'll be importing our 3D model, and the 3D model, it's actually a 3D model of this house. It's a house I like absolutely fell in love with. It's called the El Dorado Tress House by O2 Architecture. They were actually kind enough to share the model with us. That was very cool. And they're totally on board with this, very excited about this. But I love this house. There's just something like so interesting about the form, the site. We've got all these different materials. That's also the other reason I chose it. Like we've got, our concretes, we've got some water, we've got some grass, and I want to talk about different representation ways to handle that when you're doing this kind of maquette model, right? So just, we're not going to be covering every single inch of this, but I do want you to be familiar with the project. It's very, very cool. And I will say, after the workshop, you can go ahead and make this a realistic rendering if you want. That's totally fine. I am literally just sharing the models so we can start with the stylized, and then you can run wild and do your own thing. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But this is a site plan looking down. You can see beautiful, circular forms, but we've got a lot of different materials to play with, and that's the interesting thing when it comes to doing these like handcrafted, digital models. You can have a lot of fun with what they look like. So if you don't know what I'm talking about with like maquettes and all that, this is the what's it called? A little mood board I put together, and this is actually the Dropbox folder I will be sharing with you. And this is actually a good point for you to start downloading things. If you if you're is it possible to render like realistic? Yeah, of course. Yeah, Marina, you can definitely render realism in D5, but since that's so easy to do, I want to talk about something harder today, which is the stylized stuff. But for those that are downloading, I recommend you to click model to import, and we're going to download this. It's a D5A file, and I'll talk about what that is when we get in D5. But if you want the Rhino model, let's say on your own time, you want to, tweak it some more, we're giving you the 3DM. We're giving you the Rhino file. We won't be importing this today, but that's my treat. That's a bonus for you. And then if you want to, connect with me after, I've got some great resources here. All my links are here. I'm giving out a free Nano Banana prompt guide, and then the download link in case you ever lose it is right here. And the mood board. Okay. So the mood board, I highly recommend having this up, but you can see here all the different aesthetics that a model can have, right? You've got like chipboards, you've got woods, you've got concretes, you've got acrylic, right, for your water, you've got foam core, you've got museum board. So you see what I mean? Like there's so many different ways to materialize this, and that's what I meant about like the checkpoints and all that, because there's so many different ways to do this, and you have your own style. Maybe in your part of the world, you guys build different ways of models in terms of visualization. So we're keeping it flexible. This does not have to be a one-to-one workshop. I'd rather you have fun with it, because that's the whole point of the stylized rendering. Helping you stick out, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll do a quick interface overview if you are new to D5. And actually, while I'm talking about this, just drop in the comments if you are like a beginner or like intermediate user or like student. I'm just curious who we have here. That way I can tweak my language as needed. Never used it. Total beginner, absolute beginner. Oh wow, okay. So we got a lot of beginners, not a user, never used it. Oh great. Okay. Beginner. Perfect. Oh, so we'll go. I'll explain everything then. That's fine. Been using it for 5 months. Yeah, we will explain. I'll give you all the tips and tricks to get started. Yeah, that's totally fine. Awesome. Starting from zero. Okay, beginner. Oh, great, 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 great. Excellent. Okay, cool. So yeah, we will explain everything. This is great. Awesome. Yeah, because I was worried. I was like, oh, what if everyone like really knows D5 and it's like this isn't giving value? But yeah, if it's all beginners, we will start from zero-ish. Yeah, we got an advanced user. Okay, all right, great. So yeah, we'll do a quick interface overview. That way, those who have never used it, you can get comfortable. We'll talk about the city generator, pathing tools. This is like all our vegetation tools, organization tips. We will talk about all of that. And then we'll talk more about the stylized stuff about like ambient occlusion and outline. Um, talk about flat shading materials as needed, phasing animations, and just creating something that looks like this. Um, so then after we do all that, we'll be setting up the isometric view. And yeah, a lot of questions about the recording. Hamid was saying that it will be available on the site, on the PA Academy site through your account. So it will be recorded, and definitely revisit the recording. This is like a free workshop, so revisit it. Um, yeah, and then someone's asking, should we pay for D5? Jingjing Wu from the D5 Academy, but sorry, from D5 Render is actually on the call. She'll actually talk about EDU access, which is free. I've set up a couple colleges with free access and everything. So yeah, so we'll be talking about that. Talking about setting up the camera views, depth of field, and then composition, which is great for all the beginners we have here. That's great. And then we'll get into the AI enhancer, style transfer, so you can do all these like beautiful stylized views and everything. So very, very cool. And then we're pretty much going to get into it. Just one, piece of advice I always like to drop in there when people, get started with D5 or any real-time renderer. It's important to like think of things as like a photographer. Make sure you always have like a foreground, midground, background. We'll talk about that. Atmospherics can definitely help with that. Keeping your model clean. Model hygiene is so important as a beginner, making sure you have layers. It's crazy when you open up someone's file and they have no layers and like 1,500 objects. I'll give you some tips to fix that. And then we'll also talk about the balance of like stylized materials versus photorealism, because depending on the look you go for, they may clash. And then we'll also get into lighting, so your lighting looks even and it's not fighting. Lighting is so important, and I will explain all that. If you are new to D5, this is a great system requirement list that we got from the D5 render team. I get this question all the time. Oh, what kind of hardware should I get? What should I be using for D5 render? The biggest thing, if you're not a computer person at all, is like you want to look at your GPU, okay? And you want all these numbers to be as high as possible within reason/budget. Okay, so the 3000 series cards, they've been out for several years now. I think at this point they're actually probably hard to get just because they haven't been manufactured. So now we're on the 5000 series in terms of NVIDIA. So this is like 2 series ago. There's obviously computers out there that still have this hardware, but my point is you can't go to Best Buy or Micro Center or wherever you buy computer parts and like get these types of cards anymore. So if you're looking at something from the 5000 series, the current series, I do not recommend going below a 5060 Ti. That's like the bare minimum. And based on how well or how good your hardware is, that means how big or smooth your files will run. So you can't do large, master plan on a weaker card. The higher the card or like the series, right? The better it will perform. Okay, so if your computer is running really really poorly, the files are very very slow. You might need a hardware upgrade. Okay, so just putting that out there. Feel free to screenshot this if you ever are PC hunting. But are we going to get some pro days? I'm not sure what that means. But yeah, the other thing is RAM. 32 gigs, I feel like is okay, but as you get into larger scenes, I feel like 64 is like a really sweet spot. Okay, so try and get like 5060 Ti, 5070 Ti. I feel like that's a good price point, and like 64 gigs. Okay, and then always use like an SSD or an M2. The shortcut to PC hunting, again, if you're not a PC gamer or anything, literally go to a Best Buy or something and look for like the gaming machines. Okay, the gaming machines. Like, here's the reality: D5 render, from a technical point of view, is literally like a video game. Okay, so that's why gaming hardware works really well with D5 render. So the faster the computer, the faster D5 runs because it's essentially a game, right? So If you haven't already, please download the files. Hamid's already dropped it in there, but you should, if you don't want to download anything except the bare minimum, do model to import, connect with Andy if you want, and the mood board. The mood board's nice if you just want to like have it up. Talking about having it up, I actually use, I'm not like affiliated or anything, but if you've watched my videos, you know I love this tool. It's called no, that's the wrong project. It's called PureRef. This is that's a little teaser into something I'm working on. It's basically a way to just have files open um, on your screen. Like it's an overlay. So no matter what I'm touching, it'll sit there, which is really nice. So it's called PureRef. I feel like you have to donate some money to get it. But anyways, I exported it out. You guys have this. I saved you all the Pinterest time. Any type of project, whether it's like realistic or stylized, you should always have reference images by your side. And the reason you want to do that is so you know what the thing actually looks like. You know, there's no reason for you to try and figure out what a acrylic water should look like when it's been done a million times in the world. You know, just look at a photo and then we will reverse engineer it. Okay? All right, so we all good there? Everyone's downloading the files. Any issues with downloading, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Uh, I'm glad somebody likes my jokes. Um, all right, great. So we got that. And again, you do not need Rhino, SketchUp, or Revit for this. We're setting it up in a way where you don't need any of that. So if that's all good, take a sip of water, grab your coffee, grab your snacks, whatever you're doing, and then we will hop into D5. Okay. So you guys don't have this file, but this is like the end goal. I just want to show those who are like beginners, just inspirational. I'll make this full screen in a second, what we'll be doing. So this is kind of the scene. We'll be making all these different materials. Um, the grasses, museum boards, all that. We'll even, blow up the project with an exploded axon. So for those that don't know, the reason we do exploded axons in architecture is it's another way to communicate the different systems and layers within a building. So like the roof, the walls, the columns, and kind of how they all fall in or sandwich together. So that's the whole point of this. So look at that, very very cool. And it's such a useful technique. I mean, we used it nonstop in school, and I feel like before D5, it was so difficult to make these types of views that I think that's why people just stopped using it. But I feel like it's a great way to communicate. But anyways, we'll talk about, animation tools and how to do all this because it's kind of fun to just like have your project pull apart and then kind of fall back in. And you guys also have this model to make it look photorealistic if you want at a later date. And then once that's all up there, it's going to come and drop down one by one. So kind of fun. So we'll talk about all that, and we'll talk about just how to set that up. We'll do black and white. We'll do zoom ins, and then we can also do like some stylized views. And let me just drop this in. Okay, great. S- all right. So yeah, and Drive it shouldn't be a Google Drive. Wait a minute. It should be. Sorry, Hamid. I think I have the wrong. Let me grab this. Sorry. Let me put this in. I'm not sure. All right. Sorry, everybody. Try. Okay, you download the files from there. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you scared me. I was like, I didn't make a Google Drive. Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, all right. You scared me. Okay, all right, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to X out of this, and then for everyone following along who's new to D5 and wants to follow along, go to your D5 launcher. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about the D5 launcher for those that don't really understand what this is, especially if you're new to this. Um, this launcher lets you open up recent projects. It also gives you updates for like events and news, demo scenes, and everything. You can see that all here. This is also where, yes, Yusuf, there is EDU access. Actually, is is Jinqing Wu on the call? I wonder if it makes sense to just talk about that now. Let me see. It's okay if she isn't. No. All right.
She's
Oh,
here.
Hi,
she
I'm
is.
here.
Oh,
Can
perfect.
you hear
Do you
me?
want, yeah, do you want me to bring up the slides? You want to talk about that now just because of all the questions we're
Yeah,
getting? Yeah, let me
yeah,
do that.
yeah. Yeah, I can quickly go through that part if
Sure.
everybody is asking. Because, yeah, we do provide a free education license, and this is free for students and also educators. So, which means that you can apply it directly, initiated applications in the launchers, and you can submit the verification materials. And it will be better that you applying with your school emails. But if you do not with that, we have another like standards and you can go through. And yeah, we do have this kind of information on website. You can check out the educational web page on DeFi Render official website, so you can access all the information. So on this page, it's just to quickly show you the rundown of how you get the free education license. So just firstly, you have to download and open DeFi launchers. And in this part, you're signing and sign up with your school email, just mentioned, ensure your account is in the community standards because we also have a pro version and teams version which are the paid options. Currently, the educational license can only apply with the community account. So if you just sign up for your account, you probably can just start with these procedures, and then you can just click yeah, it's a little bit small here, but you can when you just sign up, you are also able to access to the applying for D5 get D5 for education entering, and and entering this one, and you can apply and follow the steps and to upload your verification materials. And then but it's do require for 7 working days manual approval. So as long as your verification are valid, then you will get educational approval within 7 working days, and then you're ready to go. So yeah, it takes some time, but yeah, but as long as you get in the educational license, then you are able to access all of the free access library, because right now we have over 15,000 free access and models in the different renders. So if you are on the educational versions, then you are able to access all of this. And also, we have quite powerful AR capabilities. I believe like ND will also give some more details regarding that part. So you can also access to all of the AR capabilities if you are the educational, if you are counted on the educational license. So that's the basically the main wrap up for the educational license. So yeah, if you're interested, you can also just download the launcher and start to initiate the applications if you are student or the educators. Yeah. So, and also for this educational versions, we don't have any like watermark. And and also it's a renewable license. And as long once you are on the education license, you'll get 180 days free access to all the features, and then it's renewable as long as your enrollment is valid. Yeah, it's same for all of the educations and sorry, the students and the educators across globe. So yeah, that's the hope it's gonna be helpful for you guys. Yeah, thank you, Andy.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I will say I know Jinjin said this, but to be clear, the education version is basically like the pro version. Like there's no restriction. Like getting access to the AI functionality is typically like a pro subscription thing. So, when I bring this to the colleges I teach at, it's like they're using D5 Pro. So you get access to everything. So it's amazing and it's free. So be sure to do that. There are some questions about can I use D5 for free? Yes, there is the community edition of D5. The only you know, I don't even want to say downside, but the only limitation is access to certain assets and functions. So like we're going to see some materials that are just for pro usage, and then we're going to see some tools that might be limited if you're on a community plan. So anyways, if you have any questions, definitely reach out to her. She's amazing. She'll definitely get back to you. She's helped me so much with this whole process. So we've got the launcher and everything. This is basically where you can hop back into your recent projects, start new projects, open files. You can also download all your plugins. So sync, this is a live sync. So the idea is if you want, you can build a bridge between SketchUp, Revit, Rhino. As you model something or move your camera around, it'll also update in D5. So that's great if you want to work collaboratively. Obviously, since I don't know what software everyone has, we're going to skip this step, but do know this exists. This is here. We're just trying to simplify things. And the beauty of these plugins is it gives you a couple different ways to import geometry into D5. You could do the live sync bridge, like I was saying, that it'll mirror whatever's going on in your software. And you can also export out your models into different like layers and groups, and that's the method I'll be showing you because it's actually perfect for exploded axometrics. Then, this is a new computer, but recent projects, right? Then team projects. So you might not see this, but if you start working at a firm and they have a team plan, which we do, this is how you would set up, sharing projects across the firm, sharing assets and everything. So we got that, and then your settings and help. So all good. All right. So first things first is we're going to go over here to new. Okay. So in your launcher, hit new, big blue button. And then I'm going to, and then this is what I was saying with PureRef. The reason I like it is I can say, make it always on top. That way it kind of lives here. And although I'm clicking on D5, it doesn't go away. So let me just change my resolution here so it's nice and full screen, and then we will get started. Okay, and let me just move this here. Perfect. All right, cool. So for those that are in D5 and this is your first time, what I recommend is we set up some settings related to navigation, and then I'll go into the UI, makes things a little bit easier. So right over here, you've got different navigation methods. You've got orbit, which basically orbits like this. I personally do not like this method because as a photographer and a visualizer, you should always be like on the ground. And I feel like this mode's good if you're in Rhino, SketchUp, and Revit. We're used to that. I personally use fly mode, and fly mode lets you fly around. So W is forward, A is backwards. Oh, sorry, W is forward, S is backwards, A is to the left, D is to the right. If you ever forget what I say, it's actually right here in the bottom left. So we've got all those controls listed right there. Then we have Q and E. These guys will lift you up or lower you. So Q is up, E is down. And then lastly, right mouse button, when you hold that down, lets you basically move your head around, okay? So your directional key will always follow whatever your head's looking at. So if I hold W and I'm looking up at the sky, I'm gonna go up to the sky. If I hold W looking at the floor, I'm gonna go down to the floor, right? So you can see I'm kind of moving sluggishly, pretty slow. That's because my movement speed is 5. If you ever feel like you're moving too slow, you could just go right here and boost this. So see that? So I like somewhere around 50, okay? That's a pretty good spot. And this is also an easy way for you to set the camera height. Look at that. So pretty nifty. So now that we've got that, I want to talk a little bit about the user interface and then we'll get into it. Over here, this is our typical file area. A setting for beginners and actually for all that I always recommend is to go to view right here and turn on statistics. Make sure that's on. Right now, because of how Zoom is, it's cutting it off, but it looks like this. It tells you your GPU usage, RAM usage, and your frame rate. You want this number to be as high as possible, okay? As you add more lights, models, whatever, this number will go down. And so when this number is like less than 15, it's really difficult to kind of work, and that's why I like to have it so I can monitor and be like, hey, I just imported this mesh I found and it completely ruined my file. So I keep that on. I also toggle these guys on. If your computer supports this, if it's a newer if it's a newer machine and it has a RTX card from the 3000 series, you should see multiple versions of this. Toggle these all on. This will boost your frame rate, make it very, very smooth. Like this is running at 120 frames per second, very smooth. Frame generation, you can either use auto or 2x. This will use AI to interpolate frames. So if you're getting 30 frames per second, you actually get 60, which is really nice. So those are the things I like to tweak when I start a new file. So over here, we've got a scene list. We'll talk about this in a moment, but think of these as like kind of like hotspots for cameras. So watch this. If I hit create new scene, it's going to save that position. Let me move over here and look at this guy and create a new scene. And this will basically let me move between the scenes. And what's nice about this is they're not just like silly camera positions. It's actually much more than that. It will save environment settings. So environment being like time of day, right? It'll also save visibility settings. So if something's toggled on or off, it'll remember that. So you see that? You see how it became nighttime? It's kind of like a fun way to animate your project. This, in my opinion, is actually a really like easy way to walk through a project in a way without setting up a video. So let's say you're sitting with your professor because you're in school or something, and you want to walk them through the procession of your project. You could set up a view called like entry. You click that, and then you could do, let's say, I don't know, foyer, whatever it is, and then you can easily switch between the two. So again, they're not just camera positions, there's so much more. Then we've got layers. So this is where we can basically put our objects on layers. We can toggle things on and off. This right here is the object outliner. So whenever I say that, I'm talking about this. This keeps track of every single asset in your scene. So talking about assets, just to give you an example, there's a little asset button. Sorry, my zoom settings are killing me right now. If you place an object in a scene, you don't have to do this. This is just explaining. Let me grab a tree and I'll put this in. Grab this guy in. It'll appear here. Okay. So let's say I'm working on a very large project and I don't know where this plant is, right? I can actually just go right over here, or I can even filter. I can filter nature. Oh my God. Get that out of here. And it will just show me that. So really, really easy way to keep track of assets. Okay. So that's that. The filter is like my best friend. And then imported is if you import models, they'll live in this container. So then over here on the right side, these are all of our environment settings. So environment, just think of like time of day, sun, clouds, weather. This is a dynamic system, so we can, create clouds. We can make them thicker. We can change the time of day. You can literally type in the time. You can play with your north offset. You can even type in a certain month, day, longitude, latitude. All that is here. And I bring this up because if you're a student, this is really good for sun studies. So you can tell your professor, hey, this is what it looks like, July 29th at 5 p.m. And that way you can kind of validate any design moves you're doing with the sun or anything, right? Here, you can also toggle on fog, wind, precipitation. Precipitation is a lot of fun. You can dynamically add snow or rain, which is really, really cool and fun. And it'll even add it on top of the assets. So like that plant I was using before, if I drop this in, it should, of course, like the one thing I pick. Let me grab a tree. Actually, I think it is, but it's not as clear. There you go. So that's what I mean. So it'll dynamically add all that. So it'll change the leaves if it's snowy or not. So a lot of fun, easy way to make like moody and stylized renders. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Other thing I'll mention is like we do have this amazing terrain controller. So you can like literally sculpt terrain and you can paint paths and everything. I mean, the D5 team has done an incredible job with this tool. So yeah, it could do a lot. Then we've got post-processing settings, and then we've got all of our main. Will it still add? Yeah, it'll add even. Yeah, so you know how I put snow first and then I put the tree on? It added the snow to the tree, although it was after. So that's cool. And then you have all your main tools here. Yeah, vegetation for sure. So this is where we add lights. This is path tools. So pathing is really cool because you could say, hey, go from point A to B and just add, these people. So if I find somebody who's walking, let me just shrink my pure ref. I can actually sort dynamic assets. A dynamic asset is one that actually moves. So I want somebody who's walking, right? That way they actually walk along the path. So you see that? So that's how you can make like a cool cinematic where people are moving around and it's not just like a static thing. Because there's a lot of D5 competitors that can't do this. And this is like a pretty cool feature. The terrain effect, just click terrain and then you'll get all that there. Okay. So I'll delete that. All right. Then we've got pathing, vegetation tools. We'll talk about that. We've got a section tool. We'll talk about that as well. So for those that are in school and you want to create like a section diagram, you can do that easily. I can actually drop in a just a simple project, not a project, a simple building. Let me grab a house or something, and I'll show you this. We use this a lot because it's so useful. Let me turn that off. So let's pretend like this is our project. The section tool will let you chop it. So if I grab this guy and grab a section plane, and look at that. I've got a section. I can even poche it, right? I can cut it anyway, right? Look at that. I can even do a section cube. So the reason you would do this is like a free rendered floor plan. Okay, so that's a little idea right there. You basically don't need to draw a floor plan because you would have the model. So that should save you some time. The second cube is kind of cool. Let me just make this bigger. So you see how it's like chopping into my project right here. Let me just add a 0. So I got the buildings from the asset library right over here. They live under outdoor buildings. The D5 library, and obviously I'll go into this, but if you do want to follow along, is really good. So you can actually just search words. If you don't have the section tool, it might be hidden under preferences. So that's actually good. I'm glad you brought that up, Arnav. If you go to preference, and then widget, there's a lot of great beta features that are hidden in here. And I believe section's right here. So you can toggle that on and off, and then that will turn that on and off. So yeah, be sure to do that. It's a great tool. But yeah, this is the cube. So you see how I'm like cutting into it. I can even go the opposite way. My driver is a little messed up, so that's not displaying correctly. But you can see very, very powerful. So anyways, now that we've talked about all this, let's actually get into the project. Because I messed up my terrain, I'm just going to make a new project real quick. Don't save. Any questions while we're at this little break? No. Okay, great. All right, cool. So I'm going to switch back to fly mode because fly mode's where it's at. Is it hard to fix terrain? I wouldn't say it's hard. It's just like I don't know, it's just like for the sake of everyone's time. I wanted to make a new project, but you've got like a flatten tool, a smooth tool, and an erase tool. But if you spend a lot of time in like, you've got mountains everywhere, it might be easier to just start fresh. But anywho, so in terms of getting assets into D5, you've got a couple ways, right? You can do a direct import, which is what we'll be doing, and then you've got that live sync that we were talking about earlier, where you're building that bridge between Revit or Rhino and SketchUp and D5. That will happen automatically, but here, since we don't have any source app up open, we're going to go straight to import. And now you want to locate the file in model to import. Okay. So this is what, myself and Hamid were sharing. Make sure you download this. So model to import. Can't make it any clearer than that. So this is a D5A file. It's a proprietary D5 file that comes out of the plugin when you hit export. Okay. And the reason we use this method is typically when you import a file into D5, it comes in as a single mesh. And I'll actually show you the difference between the Rhino file. You don't need to import the Rhino file and the D5A file. I'll show you the difference because there's pros and cons to both. Okay. So D5A, this is the one I want you to use. Okay. And then the 3DM, this is just for the sake of this instruction. So if I look at them, they look completely identical because they literally are the same model. But When I click them, notice there's a little difference. There's this bounding box here, and the bounding box is around the mesh itself. If I go over to Object and I click this guy, you see these icons? This little icon with all the vertices, that represents a group. So look at this. This brings in each mesh as a mesh, if that makes sense. So if I expand this, I've got control of my walls, of my windows and doors, right? I can toggle things on and off. So why do I want this? Well, I want this for full, flexibility of what is visible or not, as well as my phasing diagram. I want to be able to pull off specific parts. If I click this, my Rhino model, my 3DM, notice how that's it. There's nothing there. So that's the big difference. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with how it's imported. It's one mesh, right? So how do you make that from the Rhino model? When you have the plugin in Rhino, there's literally a button that says export. So that's it. It looks like a cube. You hit export, and then you get this out. You get a D5A file out. Okay. So we just skip that step just because some people might not have Rhino installed and so on. But again, you have both files. We're going to be using this one because we can literally edit any of the components. Yes, Liz, there's a way to export. Yeah. A lot of the plugins are like on parity, meaning like they're all developed about the same. So yeah, you can definitely export and all that. I think they call it separated in Revit. But the idea it's still the same, it's just terminology is a little different. Okay. So I'm going to delete the 3DM. So yeah, Arnav, the LiveSync plugin will have the export function as well. So just because I'm on a new machine, I actually don't have Rhino on me, but let me show you this. Rhino D5 render. Watch this. All right, so right here, this is the LiveSync, right? So you see, like as you move in the source app, it moves in D5. That's LiveSync. There's another function called export, and I wish. Of course, there's like no close up of it. There's a little button like right here. It's tough to show you, but it's there. Trust me. When you download the plugin, you'll see something that says export. It'll come out as a D5A. But again, true for SketchUp, Rhino, and Revit. And the reason, if it wasn't clear, is so you can get the layers, okay, or the groups. So all of this is editable, which is great. So look at all that, like each specific mesh. All right, so then Eric, great question. So now the question is, what do we do about coordinates? How does that work? If you use LiveSync, it mimics the coordinates of your source app. If you did an import, you need to tell it to sync coordinates. Okay, so I'm going to click sync coordinates, and this is going to match the coordinates in Revit, Rhino, SketchUp. Okay, so it's matching the source apps. And so I get this question a lot. Why do you care about the coordinates? Okay. So let's say, for example, I'm pretending to be the architect on this project. I'm working with a landscape architect. Okay. Landscape architect has his own file and I have my own file. If we share the same coordinate system and I import his landscape file, it will fall right on top. It'll be perfect. It'll be synced. So let's say you're working on a master plan and you've got 10 different buildings. Obviously, you want them to kind of all fall in the correct spot. So that's why the coordinate system is brilliant because it mimics whatever the source app had. So like if you've got it set up correctly in Revit, Rhino, SketchUp, right, it will come in correctly in D5 as long as you hit sync coordinates. Okay, so that's huge. And yes, exporting also works in SketchUp. Yeah, perfect. So you'll see right now that my building is in the terrain. The inspector only comes up when you have something selected, by the way. So if you don't have anything selected, you lose inspector. When you have something selected, inspector comes up. And inspector is actually kind of dynamic. So you see right now it's just giving me the transforms. But if I click this, that's not a good example. If I click, let me see, like a camera. It now gives me camera settings. That's what I mean by dynamic. It'll change depending on what's being viewed or selected or not. Okay. All right. So now that we've got all this, the issue is we've got terrain in our way. So you've got a couple ways of managing terrain. You can literally turn it off, right? So right with this guy, Or you can sculpt around your house, or you can move your house up. The reason I like don't recommend moving your actual house or project up is then I basically contradict myself with what I was saying with the coordinates, because if I have it lifted, right, and then I go to import something else, it's not going to be aligned, right? But because I know what this project is and like all that, if you were to raise it up a bit, that's okay. Nobody's going to come and arrest you. Like it's okay. This is totally fine because we know what the end goal is. We know what the project is. We know which models we have, right? So that's okay. But I think a general better practice is to turn off the terrain or sculpt down, which would be like something like this, right? Where I'm just sculpting down and revealing the project. You could totally do that if you want to play around with the terrain features, right? So it's kind of fun to do this. If you want to like paint the mountains and everything, you can definitely do that. They even have ways to import like brushes and everything. Like this guy, check this out. You can literally paint like a mountain. Watch this. Or that's a depression. Doop. So look at that. So like if you want to, have fun with this, keep your terrain on. So that looks pretty good. And then you can play with like the strength. The strength is basically like the speed of how well or fast that works. And then size is the size of your brush, right? So you could definitely do that if you want to, paint that background. So I don't hate it. So all I did was, just lower it. So Jagadish, do not import the 3DM. Import the D5A file. Yeah, so everyone make sure you're doing the D5A file. Again, it's the file that's listed as a model to import. The Rhino, I only imported the Rhino just to show you that you have that as well, and there is a difference between 3DM and D5A. Okay, so the D5A has a proprietary mesh grouping feature. Okay, cool. So we got the import. At this point, I'm just gonna make a new scene. That way, if I'm flying around all the way here, I've got an easy way to just like go back home, just like that. You want to import. Use this guy. Import this guy. The FPS tab is if you go to menu, view, show statistics. Okay. All right, cool. So now that we've got that there, and I've got my pure ref here, let's talk a little bit about materials. Okay. So if you notice my Rhino model, this is true for Rhino, SketchUp, Revit. Just like if I ever say Rhino, it applies to everything else. Okay. Like don't, you know, um, no, Sigrid, if you export, it'll let you know, it'll ask you which depth you want, and then it'll break it up as meshes. And then to sync coordinates, hit this guy. Yeah. All right. So yeah, no problem. So for materials, you know how I've got all these different colors? Again, this is true for all the apps. The reason I use these bright colors is it's literally like a reminder to me, like, hey, you've got work to do. Like, this is not done. I actually get in trouble when I use whites like this because to me, from far away, it could look like a concrete. So I try to use these like bright colors. That way it lets me know, hey, you've got to fix this. So how do you get these colors? Well, in your source app, right, you can apply a material to a mesh or a layer. Basically, any mesh on that layer will inherit the color. You could do it that way. So you'll see like a lot of my surfaces are being highlighted at the same time. I'm using I as the material picker just to show you this. So anything that is the same color gets edited at the same time. Okay, I'll repeat that one more time. Anything that's the same color gets edited at the same time. I have further proof because of all the things highlighted. So I've got my eyedropper, my material picker selected. I'm going to click this beige color. Now, if you don't believe me, if I change this, see how it's changing the color anywhere that's highlighted? Okay. So now the question I always get is, well, Andy, I have this very important wall right here that shouldn't be the same color as everything else. So this is why the grouping or the export method is really nice, because if I double click this guy, it finds the actual mesh in the whole grouping, because I would never be able to find this under walls. So double click in D5, it's called detaching. Usually used for like vegetation, but it's an easy way to click within groups. Because if I do a single click, let me click off. If I do a single click, you see how it picks up the whole mesh, but if I do a double click, it goes in there. That makes sense. So this one wall, let's say it has to be separate from everything else. There's this idea of making it unique. So it wants to be different. We make it unique. Because if I were to change the materials on it now, just as an example, right? See how it changes all the walls? But this wall's special, right? So I need to make it unique. So I'm going to make unique. And now when I change its color, look at that. Only that wall changes. Okay. So if you don't want to change everything at the same time, use your double click, right? And or apply a different material to it. Like this green will not change this. I don't know. I don't even know what color this is. Like purple, bluish purple. It won't change because they're different material channels. Okay. So if you ever hear that, they're different materials. So if you ever want to break it, either do it in the app directly or double click into your object, right? So if I just want this roof to be its own thing, I would make it unique and so on. Yes, Jennifer, you can make a surface unique. Just right click and make unique, but that surface would need to be its own mesh, if that makes sense. Like, so what I mean is this surface is kind of like a box. You can kind of see it like that. It's because that's the mesh. If I want literally, if we're talking like technical, just the surface, that would have to be its own thing, own mesh. Okay, all great questions. All right, so now let's go over to assets. So right over here, we've got different areas of your asset library. You have materials, and this is like when people are like, okay, why should I use D5 over everyone else? This is like one of the strengths of D5. Like the material library and the model library is insane. Just like the nature category itself, like we've got like hundreds of pages of beautiful photorealistic trees. And once you guys get more into your like ArcViz journey, you're going to realize how expensive and frustrating it is to get assets from a third party platform and bring it into any real-time rendering app. It's such a pain in the butt. Like each of these trees could easily sell for $15 to $30 each on some sort of 3D marketplace. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, all here. So we love the asset library. D5 also, one of the reasons we love them is they listen to their users, especially when it comes to assets. You'll get emails about asset surveys and everything. So tell them if you're missing any assets, what you need. Like for example, firsthand experience. Like all these waiters and people like and people hanging around by pools. That was like a request that came from us, and like within 2 weeks they added that. So we love them for that. It's great like having them as partners in that respect. So they listen. We love that. So anyways, they've got materials. And I will say 95% of the materials I use, if you ever watch my videos, literally 95% comes from the D5 library, and then I tweak it. And if it's not here, which is like very rare, let's say it's like a very specific spec, I can use or leverage some of D5's AI tools to make that material look better. And we'll talk about what makes a good material and bad material in just a moment. But I want to say like there is plenty of flexibility. And when I talk about flexibility, you can also go from like in the same material from like a metal to a glass and like vice versa, or like a glass to a concrete. You actually don't need to like reset the material. It's actually really cool that you can switch domains and all that. So we'll talk about that as well. So Miriam, when we're done importing assets like trees into D5, can it then be exported to, no, it can't be. It can't be sent back. Like it's not bi-directional. Okay, so yeah, and that's mostly because of like how the engine reads the files and everything. Because like Rhino is in a real-time render engine, it's actually would do horribly with the vegetation assets because D5 is kind of like a video game engine. It can handle lighting, materials, geometry really well, but Rhino cannot handle materials and lighting really well. It can handle NURBS, but it's horrible for meshes. That makes sense. So anyways, we've got all these amazing materials. Yeah, Siegfried. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Just make sure you toggle that layer depth thing to do it correctly. So anyways, these are all neatly organized and everything. All my like references here, like this guy, they're all kind of like a wood, like a basswood. There's some like museum board and all that, but you can see lots of different colors of woods. And this is what I meant about we'll take little checkpoints because you might disagree with me about the color of a wood or a museum board or a foam core, and that's okay. Again, this is stylized stuff. You guys do whatever you want. I really don't care. I just want you to make beautiful visuals and like have fun doing it. That's what I'm here for. It doesn't need to look like my model, okay? I don't want it to look like my model, put your personality to it. But the point is with these diagrams or these models, right? I think, in my opinion, like there's probably a couple different ways to think about this. I'll give you an example. This is an example one where it's kind of like, I'll call this the samey method, where all the materials of the model are basically shared. So let's say like this is basswood, that's basswood, this is baby's breath, and then this is like some sort of like oak, right? So the whole thing is made of wood. The only issue I have from like an aesthetics point of view and just like a comprehension point of view, the building doesn't stand out from the site, okay? So there's no focus, right? But if I look at a project like this, right? There's focus because the contrast between the white here, the darker oak, and the lighter site makes this stick out, right? This is another example. Architecture is white, model is chipboard, right? So let me move around. This is kind of like all wood, but there's a lot of contrast with the acrylic, so it kind of makes sense. There's a contrast between the land, the water, and the project. Here, we've got cardboard topography, museum board, and then wood for the architecture. So I hope you guys are getting what I'm saying. Contrast, in my opinion, is the better way of doing an architectural model. I just think that's a cleaner way, especially if you're presenting this to a client. It just makes it stick out. When you get into ArcViz more, you'll notice, contrast is literally like the biggest thing. That's why lighting and composition is so important. So this is again samey, but also a beautiful model. So there is a lot of like I don't want to say flat, but like a lot of topography where the buildings do kind of stick out anyways. So it kind of works. But here we've got like a concrete versus a wood. So I hope you get what I'm saying at this point. I feel like I've beaten this to death, but let me lower this, crank this. And now let's try and find some woods. Well, how do I find wood? If I click right over here, got all these different woods. There's like an insane amount of woods here. So this is what I'm saying. You are free to choose whichever one you want. If you want to follow along with what I do, that's fine. But I think you should tweak it your own way. The thing you're looking for, in my opinion, is something that's not super linear. So you see this light zebrano. When I say linear, you see this striping. This I don't think is a great material for our project. You want something that's kind of like what's a good way of saying it? Of like almost like I don't want to say seamless because they are technically seamless, but they don't have definition. Let me show you. Let me grab the zebra. You don't have to follow along with this, and I'll place this. So when I place it, you see how there's like so much stripage and it's kind of like distracting. But if I get something by like a light oak, we don't have the same, we shouldn't have. Yeah, without veins. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want anything super defining. Like let me lower the scale and we'll talk about scale and all that in a moment. But you see how it's not as distracting. Like sure there's some knots here, but the veining is really rough. So personally, I like this poplar. But again, there's so many different ones. Like the peach wood is nice. There's a lot of nice ones. But my point is, don't get something with lines or planks. Okay, so I'm going to use this poplar, and I'll start to set it up. Um, and for some reason, it's like super shiny, but we'll fix that. Let me just place it. There we go. I'm going to place it on the main part of the house. Okay, and now I can start tweaking things. So the first thing I always want to tweak when it comes to materials is I want to make sure that the base color, so this is like a color overlay, makes sense to some degree. So if you add black, it gets darker. If you add white, it gets lighter, right? So I just want to make it a little bit darker. Then I've got a base color map. This is where you import textures. So if you have your own texture that you want to add, you would just go to base color map and you click this guy, right? Then you have normal, and then normal is what's controlling how raised some pixels are. So let me show you 0. Okay. And then I'll show you a little bit of normal, right? So you see how it's like adding all that grain and all that. So I don't want to go too far. 0.3, I think that's totally fine. Then specular, this is the intensity of your highlights. So look over here. You see how these are like glowing, but if I lower it, it goes away. Think of that as like the sheen, right? And then roughness, it's basically like, is it super, super rough or super, super shiny? So you see how reflective that is? So generally I don't want to go like too much in one direction, but that's what those guys do. Then metallic is like, is it metallic or not? Obviously it's not. And then AO is ambient occlusion. And emissive is if it glows or not, which we don't need. Then this is really where I do think you should spend some time. First thing I always do is I use this thing called round corner, because look at these 90-degree corners right here. Nothing in the real world is a 90 degrees super sharp. So if I press this, it's going to round that edge. Let me increase this. So look at that. So you see how we've got like a nice rounded edge right here? So that's what happens in the real world. We don't have anything that's super, super sharp. And just to illustrate this better, I can actually go over to environment and just play with the sun just so you can see that. So very easy to use this gizmo. Just move it up and down or play with north offset to rotate it. But that's always have that. So that's like, I feel like the foundation of ArcViz having the round corners. Okay. Then we've got these guys here. We've got triplanar and UV randomizer. These go, you got to use them all the time. Triplanar is very useful if I'm not going to say this happens all the time, but let's say I think it happens more in SketchUp where you start stretching or pulling, pushing and pulling different things or scaling, and then the UVs, so literally like the texture scale gets stretched. This triplanar basically applies like a world map or a world scale to your texture. So right now I made it really, really small because it's using the world's coordinates. So all I have to do is actually boost the stretch. So the stretch is the texture size. So if I go with 0.05, 0.02, this is like a good scale. They're all going in the same direction. If you don't like this direction, you can always go to rotate 90 and change that. And if you want to be, even more, I don't know, more advanced, you could go into making them each unique if you want and applying different scales for each. But it's kind of like a balance of getting the right amount of stretch for your project. So maybe I go with like 0.03. Yeah, that looks good. Just want to make sure it's nice and uniform everywhere. Okay, and once we have that, that looks good. Then there's this other guy called UV randomizer. This depends on the material you're working with or on. So this will help make things make them look a little bit more seamless, but it needs to make sense. Anything that's got like linear details or like modular details, like a brick or a tile, you generally don't want to use this because it'll start to make things look a little splotchy because it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense with like an asphalt, something that's more less defined. So I'll show you an example here. I'll grab an asphalt because it's important that you like know how to use this. Actually, I'll just grab this concrete. It'll make sense. You don't need to place this concrete, but I'm gonna put this here. And you see how it's like all rocks and all that? So if I were to go and add UV randomizer, you don't see that same splotchiness because it's just like it's all random anyways. So you would use it for anything that's not modular, okay? So no tiles, no bricks. But for like aggregates, use it, okay? So we've got this. This looks good. The other thing I will point out when you're doing materials in general, you should have, the light on literally so you're not working in the dark. So make sure you position that correctly. And then the other thing I like to do under camera, I personally like to turn off auto exposure. Just because when I'm setting up scenes, you don't want it to get you in trouble. But what this is basically telling me is like my sun is really, really bright, which has pros and cons. You can actually go to more and lower the intensity. But if you don't want to deal with that, you can always just turn on auto exposure, but just remember that it's on because what happens is you go to set up scenes with like artificial lighting and your values are all off because you were, automatically playing with the exposure. So it can get you in trouble. So that's why I bring it up. So now that we've got, this nice wood, it's, nicely defined everywhere. I'm happy with it. I can actually duplicate this elsewhere. So if I want to duplicate it to the fascia. So I can click this guy, duplicate, and now I'll click this, and now it'll be applied on the fascia. So the important thing is these are two different, what is it? What is it? Instance. I always get instance and copied mixed up, but they're not linked. Okay. So if I change this guy, I'll make it red, right? It only changes the fascia. So although it came from the same parent material, they are different. So you're free to, play with them, darken it, change the scale if you want, and it won't affect the other one. So because of how stretched the scale looks here, I'm actually going to go ahead and play around with that. Yeah, maybe we go with 0.1. And that looks like a good scale for that. I'm happy with that. And then if I want, if I want to kind of mimic the real world scenario, I can maybe darken it a bit, get some nice texture variation. So that's a little bit darker than my roof. That's totally fine, right? So I'm going to go ahead and so to repeat the steps with the fascia. So first you want to grab your roof material, and then you want to duplicate it, and then you can paste it here, is all I'm saying. And because they're different, you can tweak the base color, make it darker. You can tweak the stretch. They're basically different items. And then what we'll do is we'll do like a couple more materials. I'll show you how to do the water, the ground, the grass, and then we'll do our little I think I was calling it a checkpoint where you guys can spend a little bit more time adding materials and everything. So I'm gonna grab my roof here, and I'm going to start pasting it on my wall surfaces. So I want to make sure it's on my walls, my columns and everything. And I'm just going to make sure I'm playing with the scale just so it looks nice and uniform. Yep. You don't want it to look stretched is my point. The soffit we'll tackle in just a moment. Okay. And then these walls, like if you think the scale is too small or too large, you can make them unique. Remember, I said double click, and then you can right click, make unique if you want it to be its own thing. But I'm fine with it how it is. So I'm just going to basically apply wood anywhere else I want it to be. I'll add it there. We've got it there. Everything else should probably be like a museum board. Yep, that's totally fine. Okay, cool. So now that we've got our woods there, I recommend we all save. So you can go to menu, file, and then save as. So I'm going to save this into the Dropbox folder in case anyone wants this file. I see you working. I call it working just because it's a working file, work in progress. And now I want to tackle the water. So water is basically like a resin or an acrylic. So it looks something like this. So water has a lot more properties than our typical. They're called like custom materials in D5. You see this template. So this is where you would add unique materials. So you could do like car paint. You can make it transparent. You can subsurface. How can I recover the material I tweaked? Oh, right over here where it says reset. You can reset it that way. You can do subsurface scattering. So the glass right here, or the acrylic, right now I do have it as transparent. You could definitely do it as transparent. But if you look here, you see how there's like depth here, and that looks really, really cool. So I would actually switch this to be water. And now with the water parameter, we can actually add depth. Look at that. You see how I'm like darkening and there's that nice gradient? So I can actually go one step further and watch this. If I love this color, I can click this guy right here, base color. And you see this eyedropper? This eyedropper can actually pull from things outside of D5. So I can actually grab that, and now it's matched that color, which is pretty cool. So I can play with that some more. And now I have water. So that's pretty cool. And if you wanted, for those, so Irina, you get inspector if you click something. You need to hit the eyedropper on a material or just click an asset. So if you wanted, kind of like water reflections, you ever look at a pool and you see like the white light, those are called caustics. So how caustics work is you need to enable it in the material as well as the light. So you see that? That's caustics. So I can play with the intensity, and the softness. So if you ever wanted to make it look like an actual pool, you could use that. So that's pretty cool. I think it's a lot of fun. But I'm going to turn that off because we don't need it. So you can go ahead, you can play with the color of your water. Again, you can use the eyedropper if you want to get that depth look, but it's really this guy that's going to give you that nice gradient. And then flow velocity, this is like how fast the water's moving. Since this is a model, you could just set it to 0 because it really shouldn't be moving. But yeah, you can dial in the colors as well as you want. But we've got that. That looks really cool and good. Love that. And then I think this is, yeah, it's all the same. Then we've got the actual glass. So the glass, that in terms of architectural models, I feel like there's two schools of thought. You can is it easy to navigate the camera around? Oh yeah, yeah. So this is why I use fly mode. So I can fly in here. So I'm in the house, right? So with glass inside models, you either have it or you don't. Generally speaking, when I was in school, we didn't put glass in because I was a poor college student and I couldn't afford the the acrylic. So it's fine not to have glass in here because we exported the model. You could hide the glass, or just for the sake of this tutorial, I can show you how to make glass as well, right? So it's twofold, but don't feel like you need to do the glass or not. How did you fix that? So Tanju, this is an app called PureRef. It's called this PureRef. I think I had to donate for it a long time ago. I don't remember, but I use it because it can live on top of everything. But anyways, so we've got that here. For the glass, what you could do is you can go to the asset library and go to glass itself and literally just pick one of these. Again, the D5 library is incredible in terms of having every material you need. So I could go to frosted acrylic if I want and tweak it to fit my look. So here, I made it frosted and I'm just going to edit it. And this is all transparent. So like a frosted glass, all it means is it has a normal map here. So that's what's giving it the roughness. But then there's the opacity, right? So you see that frosted look. If I set this to 0, you see how I can see through some more? So that's what that's doing. So I could do that if I want. I can also make it shinier, right? Or less shiny, right? So this is like a mirror, right? But because I have that normal, it's scuffing it up. So this is a perfect mirror. I want it to be a little bit frosted. I don't really have anything on the interior, so I don't need it super visible. And then I can darken it if I want. So there we go. So we've got like a little bit of an acrylic glass. So I like the frosted look just so it can kind of like block what's going on in there. That's a nice little trick as well. So because I'm paranoid all the time, I'm just gonna hit Control S to save, or you can go File, Save. All right, I'll take a little moment right there. Anyone have questions so far? Are we having fun? Are we having fun yet? Okay, cool. Good explanation. Okay, cool. Can you please show very quickly? Sorry, Tanju, what is the question? Oh, I didn't quite get the acrylic. Okay. Yeah, so since we've got some moment, well, I'll talk about the acrylic again. So if you go to Assets, Glass, Frosted Acrylic, I applied the acrylic. Oh, the pool. Yeah, okay, I'll talk about the pool too. So for Olalakan, um, okay. All right, lots of questions. So we'll start with the acrylic first. So yeah, I applied the acrylic and then I just tuned the color and then the roughness and opacity. If you want, you can copy these settings if you want. So the reason you actually have to download the materials one by one, it's actually kind of there's pros and cons. The clever part is when you install D5, I think it's less than a gig to install. I have like 300 megabytes in my head. It's very lightweight. So these assets, each of them could easily be 100 megabytes each. So if you have 2,000 materials, 100 megabytes each, it actually balloons the file. This is actually one of the issues with Lumion, and like I don't want to like throw Lumion under the bus, but with them deploying to enterprise settings, like our firm could never use it because we couldn't install 50 gigabytes on each person's computer. So That's the benefit of the cloud library. You basically choose where it's stored, and you have full control over how big your file is. Okay, so we got that. Then the water acrylic that somebody was asking, I basically made the template a water template, and you can follow these settings. And I picked the color from here as well. Oh yeah, and then to color match, just click the eyedropper under the color, and then just grab it from anywhere off your screen. Okay, and then again, the window in the bottom left, I'm using a tool called PureRef, and the reason I use it is because it makes it easy to collage things and have it live on top of assets, so I don't need to keep dragging. Okay, so I think I nailed all the questions there. So next thing I want to tackle is this kind of like landscaping material. So the project itself, this is like a white. I'll show you. Yeah, you see how it's like a white pavement? So what I want to do here is kind of make it look like we could go with a desaturated version of this or go with like a museum board. So for those that don't know what museum board is, it's just like fancy thick paper. Comes in like 1/16 to yeah, about 1/16 to 1/8. It's really, really great to use. Like if you're doing like final models, you usually do it out of that. It's like a nice clean look. That's what these guys are. That's a museum board. But it's basically just like paper. All right. So then Marco's asking, how do you copy? Just hit duplicate right here. So I drop and then duplicate. So to do the paper, what I like to do is I go to assets and then I search for, check my notes. I think it's called like a wallpaper. I think you could also do yeah, exactly. You got all these wallpapers. And I know it sounds weird to use a wallpaper, but this is what I was talking about where you can turn any material into something else. So if I grab texture wallpaper, I'm already losing my voice and we're an hour and a half in. And I'm going to place it on the landscape here. So I'm using texture wallpaper 1. You don't need to use this. You could use a desaturated version of the wood. I don't care. You can use any. You could pick your own. But I'm going to show you how to take this not so great material and make it work for this situation. So I'm going to hit eyedrop. And this is actually a good example of why I use triplanar. You see how I mean, there's pros and cons. You see how like each square is rotated but a different scale. Generally, that's really good, but look at how distorted this looks. So if I do triplanar, it unifies it. So that's why you would use that, just as a pro tip. Or you could just shrink the scale. But again, you could go with either. I just personally don't like the stretching. Like it should look more like this, but it stretched it. But again, this is a good example of why triplanar is important. So you could go with either. But anyways, I'm going to go with triplanar because that's usually my thing. I'll do 0.1, and we'll see that there's a lot of contrast in the image, which doesn't look good because this is supposed to be like a museum board. But the reason I went with something with so much contrast is in the real world, nothing is clean or perfect. There's usually imperfections. And using something with contrast is actually a really easy way to make it look more realistic because if you go over to base color map, under advanced settings right here, there's a setting that nobody actually knows what it does, but it's a contrast setting. If I lower it, watch what's going to happen. You see how it's removing the blacks from the image. So if I take a little bit of that, now I've got this very, very, very subtle contrast between the black and the gray of my texture here. I can also go crank it the other way just to show you like the contrast in the image. So if I do a little bit of that, it's like the museum board, but tinted a little bit. And then I can lower this, and now I've got that lighter landscape type of material. And then I can play with the normal map, which is, you know, this guy that's giving me the depth, right? So that gives me some like bumps in the paper. So now when I look at it from far away, you see how I've got like different pockets of color and everything. So we love that. That's what it should look like in the real world. It shouldn't be like 100% flat paints. Like this is flat paint, right? This, like, which one's more interesting, right? The one with the normal and the variation or the flat. So that's my point. That's why I do that. So I like this. I've dialed this in. I'm going to copy this and paste it on the pool area. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to white this out. But you noticed I can't make it any whiter, right? So this is another little tip slash hack that I got. If you go over here to more settings, this is the setting for your base color map. If you go here, you can actually override the saturation. That's what S stands for. So hue, saturation, brightness. So I can desaturate and then I can brighten it. So brighten is just another word of saying whiten, right? So look at that. So now I get the same texture, but I've exceeded the base color. So we're basically literally editing the texture itself. So it's kind of like you went into Photoshop and just edited it. So I've got that there. I'm gonna make sure I've got my round corner on for everything. Look at the difference right there. We got that on. Let's do the same thing for our tiles. And now look at that. Look at that nice little edge right there. So before, after, before, after. So you see all these little details are adding so much more realism to the model. So I love that. I'm going to save because I'm paranoid. Okay. And then we'll add these last three materials and we'll do our little checkpoint break. So now for the grass. The grass, totally up to you guys how you want to handle it. Sometimes I go with something that looks kind of like grassy or mossy, or you can go with a wood. If you want to do like a darker wood here, that's totally fine. I'll show you a couple options. So it's like you could. So Tiago, yeah, pay attention to this one because it's literally this workflow. So you can go to duplicate. I can place it here, right? And now I've got my copy, and I could, if I want, make it like a dark oak, but I feel like for this, I want to bring in some grass. I want to bring in some color. So what I could do is I could literally scroll down to what's it called? It's I think it's natural raw material. Yeah. You've got all these guys. So you've got beautiful materials here. You can also search for words. So like I could search for moss if I want, and anything that's mossy, I can do that. So like I could literally grab this guy. Um, not saying you have to use this, but you've got that. How do you drag a material where the tile edges? No, so Arnav, the whole beauty of the round corner feature, this guy right here, is it adds the round edges. So there you go. So for every material you do duplicate, does this mean if you don't, the material and assets is changed? So for every material you don't, yes, 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 yes. So if I edit my roof, right, they're going to change everywhere. Okay. So yeah, do pay attention to that. And then Mohammed, does it support V-Ray? I'm not sure what the ask is. All right. So then for the moss, right? So this is looking pretty realistic. I'm gonna just shrink the scale a bit. So let's not go there. Let's go like 2. And I kind of like it, but I also think it's like too realistic. And this is what I was saying, like you got to balance the realism versus the stylized. So you got a couple options here. You could go with this, you could go with like a dark wood, or you could copy the museum board. Let's try that. And we could tint it like a green, like a very pastel-y green. So I'm gonna grab something like that. Yeah, you could do something like that. That's fine. We can add some more green to it. Yeah, that's one option. We've got triplanar. I could play with the scale as well. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got options. So I like that. And now we've got this kind of area, which is like a gravelly area. And if you're ever unsure, you can always look at this photo. That's why I brought this up here. Let me hide my pure ref. See how it's kind of like a darker area. So you could make this a dark wood if you want. That's actually probably a good use case. So I can copy again with duplicate. I can paste this here. And then just to mix things up, let's change the rotation from 90 to 0. And let's darken this. So look at that. You could do that. Or you can grab a brand new wood asset altogether. Again, I want you guys to like have fun with this, make your own thing. You could grab, you know, yeah, so we can do that in a second. So yeah, you can grab a different material and use that or duplicate. Again, does not matter, whatever you like. So for the grass, all I did was I duplicated our landscape. I put it here and I just grabbed a base color here. Or you could grab a moss or anything. I'm fine with either. They're totally fine. So now this pinkish area, this, if I remember correctly, is like a I don't even know what you call this. This is like a medium brown dirt color. So what we could do is get a lighter version of this. Actually, just to mix it up, let's just grab a different wood. Let's try. Can you add volume to the grass, keeping the same color? Ibrahim, when you say volume, could you elaborate? Let me grab. I want to find something kind of like medium-ish. Oh, in height. In height, you can, yeah, you can definitely do that. Yeah, you can also add assets. You can also play with the normal or the displacement of that. That's definitely all possible. Yeah, I can show you another version of that. So for this, let me try cherry. Let's see what this looks like, and then we'll so that. And then Mohammed, this is all using ray tracing. So that is the thing. Okay, so we've got that. So we're going for like a medium. Do triplanar, and then we'll play with that scale as well. Okay. Ray tracing is basically the technique that's used for like rendering. I will say in 2.11 there is now path tracing, which is like the better version, slightly a little slower than ray tracing, but it's what mimics rays of light bouncing around. So basically, what happens is like the sun emits a ray, it bounces off of a surface and it keeps bouncing, and so that technology, I feel like what it's 2016, 2018 or something, it became a thing. And it just makes things look more realistic. Yeah, it's literally following the rays, tracing the rays. Yeah. So then the question about the height of the grass. So generally speaking, you don't need to do this. I'm just going to bring up a grass material. You have this idea of displacement. So displacement, let's see, let's grab something like this, is kind of like the normal map's big brother. Yeah, here we go. And let me zoom in. And you see, as I do this, you see what's happening? You see how it's like literally adding height? So that's displacement. So normal adds, some minor definition, but height adds like crazy definition, right? So that's what that guy does. So yeah, I hope that answers your question about volume. You would use displacement. So that's its own template, okay? So we usually live in the custom template. Displacement is the displacement template. Yeah, so I'm just gonna hit Control Z to undo because I want my museum board back. And okay, at this point, this is also like some street. So I'm just gonna I'll grab this museum board and I'm gonna duplicate it. I'll paste that there. And I'm just gonna darken it just a tad and rotate 90 degrees. And that's it. So we've got the majority of our materials here. So I want to do our little checkpoint here. So I want you guys to, take like 5 minutes to wrap up your materials. I'm here to answer questions. I'm gonna keep refining like the scale and the stretch of things, just because it like drives me nuts when it's a little off. And then we'll move into the next step. But I, obviously want to give you guys time to catch up, of course, and make sure all your materials are done correctly. And don't forget about like the whole make unique thing. Like that's still a thing if you want to do. And don't forget about round corner and all that. Make sure that's there. So I always do this check round corner. And then Irina is asking how to remove the water flowing. It's this guy, flow velocity. So 0 means static. So if you have that higher, it's going to make it move. So turn that off. So the stretch is like the UVW. Yes. So Jennifer, your point about the UV mapping. This is why I use triplanar, because if I don't, you see, the scale is off, but things will be distorted without it if this source app kind of like screwed that up. So that's why I like triplanar. I'll even put on some UV randomizer on the museum board. Why not? See how it looks with our grass. Yeah, that actually makes the grass look better. Perfect. All right, cool. All great questions, guys. Any other questions while we're at this little checkpoint? So how to add 3D grass. You actually have like a bunch of options. now that I think about it, for 3D grass. So yeah, we'll do a little side tangent. Um, so if you want to add 3D grass, you could literally go to your material and hit grass. This will make it a 3D grass material, just like Lumion. So you see that? It added it. You've got different profiles and everything. That's one way. Um, yeah, which is pretty cool. You can play with the coloring and everything. So this is like I would say one to one, like the Lumion thing, where it's like the material turns it into a grass, for sure. Then there's like other tools like vegetation and scatter that do the same kind of idea. That's under these guys where you can add vegetation, and we'll do that like in the next couple steps for sure. And now, Walter, do you add interior lighting? Yes, interior lighting. What is that? Is that our next? We could do that next. We can do interior lighting next. I'll show you that because I want it to glow a little bit, like just a little orange glow. We will do that next. All right, now Arnav, if I change the material settings for a material, will it change the material settings in the material library also? No, it will not. So this is another huge pro of D5. So let's say, for example, Arnav, I'm working on projects that happen to share the same materials and I want it for the future. If I edit it, it won't edit the D5 library, but I can add to local. So when I do add to local, look at this. It says add it to local. That means if I go to assets and then local, that's this guy right here. I can use this for future projects. And this is always saved. It's always like you're not editing it. So even if I place it somewhere and I change it, it's not going to get messed up. So you could do this for models. You could do it for materials as well. So don't worry that it's like all XREFed and it's going to destroy your other projects. That's not the case. You're totally fine, but use that local trick. So then Irina's asking, what if you have a custom material? Yeah. So if you have a custom material, let's say, for example, I'm going to grab a simple plane here just to show you this. Basic model. All right. So I've got this plane here. And just a little pro tip under model basic materials, you've got all your basic materials. So you're asking, how do I import a custom material? So right now, this material is completely blank, right? So let's say, oh my God. Let's say I want a material. Let me go to ambient CG. Actually, you know what? Let's have some fun right now. I'm going to show you some AI stuff. We'll do a little while people are doing their materials. We'll do a little side tangent. And let's say, we'll still try to think of the best way to do this. Who's a good manufacturer? Let's do this. Marble tile. Okay. So let's say I've got my designer hat on. So I'm being Mr. Architect right now. Actually these guys are great in general for assets, but I don't want a texture. I want like tile bar. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And let's say, I'm being Mr. Architect and I want a slab. I want a slab. Let's go with I don't want your samples. Go stone look. And I want to see if I could find I want like a slab. I don't want like an actual tile. And I can show you how you can leverage D5's AI stuff to make this actually really easy. Yeah, we love Calcutta. Let's do that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So this is no, don't show me that. Yeah. So I feel like this is the scenario architects and designers always get into where they've got this like small little box of what the texture is. So this is what you can do using D5. And like this isn't the greatest material for this, but still I want to show you the steps. So I'm just gonna snippet it and I'm gonna do like a really hacky job. I'm not even gonna go edge to edge, and I'm gonna save this. And let's pretend like this is the texture map I get from the client, right? We'll call this Kala. Okay, so now I can go into D5 in my base color map, okay? Base color map, not base color, base color map. I'm gonna click this guy. And then I'm gonna go to Calicut. And now I'm gonna play with the scale so it looks bad. Okay, and you see how I've got all this horrible tiling and everything? Well, this was a super low res marble, which was really bad. If you have a pro plan and above, you're gonna get this guy called the texture enhancer. So this is going to upscale the texture. So I'm gonna do that real quick. And so this is basically going to double the resolution. So if it's like a 512 by 512 texture, it'll enhance it. If it's 1K, it'll make it 2K. Already looks sharper. Then I have make seamless. So if I do make seamless, it's going to analyze the image. It'll notice the seams. And again, this is why D5 is awesome. I can hit make seamless and it's going to do its best to remove these seams. So you don't have to go to Photoshop. This is how you do it. Like back in my day, you would go into Photoshop and you would do this and it sucks. It's like a really painful process. It's going to do this automatically. If you do it before the upscaling, it goes faster, but since it's a higher res image, it goes a little slower, but yeah, so so while that's loading, um okay, perfect. So didn't do a perfect job. No, that's weird that I actually that's weird. I actually did something weird there. That's not normal, but usually that's weird. Usually it makes it seamless. Not sure what happened there. Um that's weird. But you see how I only have a base color map? Well, the issue with that is you don't have any of these texture maps. So if you hit AI generated texture maps, it'll give you your normal map, your roughness and all that. Um, and so on. So once those come in, yeah. So now you've got a normal and a roughness and AO, which is great because designers hate making these maps. So that's one benefit. Not sure what happened with Make Seamless. That's not normal. Maybe it's having an off day. But but yeah, that's one way of doing it. So long story short, you can use base color map to import your own textures. Okay. So then catching up. Oh yeah, it'll work with a UV randomizer. Yeah. It's basically your typical asset. So you could go triplanar, you could do UV randomizer, and yeah, you could see like that's that weird seam from before. Yeah, this one, yeah, someone got a little weird on this one. Yeah, that's really weird. So then Vernia, I've been using our Atlantis a long time. It's quite similar. Could you import a wallpaper for? Yeah. So you can literally import, use that custom and then the base color map. All right, cool. All right, great. Lots of great questions. Cool. So this is in a good spot. I think Walter was asking about interior lights, which I'm glad he did. So this is a good point to organize and also talk about the lights. So this is what I mean by lights. I want like a little glow to come out of this project. So you see that? I want that glow. So I'm going to show you how to get that magical warm glow. So first things first is I want to organize our file. So you'll see right here with layers. Right now I have a default layer. I can call this architecture if I want. And then I can create a new layer called lights. And you notice that there's a little check mark next to the layer. That means this is my current layer. So anything I add asset wise, not material wise, only asset wise, like models, will be on this layer. Okay. So if I grab a light, you don't have to click this. I can tell in the inspector it's on the light layer because that is my default layer. I can always switch, right? I can also drag it, right? But I can also just do it here. Okay. So just pointing that out. So interior lights. Now that I have my lights layer, we go over here, and in 2.11 we got these awesome disc lights. If for those, let's say the beginners here, you have different lights in D5. You've got point lights, and let's go into this dark foyer. A point light is basically like an orb. It emits in all the directions, so that's why my ceiling and my floor are lit up. So that's a point light. Then you have a spotlight. So these are like your can lights, right? Your down lights. Then you've got strip lights. This is like your kitchen under cab LED light. Like for example, there's a kitchen over here. If I grab this, that's basically your under cab light, right? So you've got that. That's very cool. You also have rectangular lights. So these are just big lights like that emit light. And then we got this guy, which is called disc lights. And disc lights, these are brand new. They're just kind of like soft. They're like They're very soft circular lights. So they're kind of like the rectangular lights, but they're softer. I don't really know how else to explain it, that it's just like a good light for softness. When I say softness, I mean like if I look at my environment right now and I go to, let's say, sun disk radius, you see how this is a sharp shadow? That's sharp lighting. And then this is very soft. So that's what I mean. You get light like that with the yeah, it's like a panel light, exactly. Like a diffused panel light is the proper term. Yeah, thank you, Eduardo. Um, so I'm gonna go over to an inspector and whoops. And right over here, I've got all these attributes about. Oh, somebody's asking about making a light longer. This is true for any light, but you've got sizes here. So you can, whether it's for the disc light or the strip light, you can make it longer with your size right here. A strip light is just like a baby rectangular light. If that makes sense. So next thing we've got is IES profiles. If you're an interior designer and you work with lights, you can actually choose profiles. You can get this like from GE. This is like the scientific, technical manufacturer spec for how the light is thrown. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you see this like cone I'm getting here. This controls that cone, and this uses like real world light data, which is great. So now that I've got this here, we've got, your intensity. You can go by lumens or candelas, right? So I can boost the intensity. And the idea is I want to start to see some light from here. I'm just going to say 100 for now. And just for the sake of visibility, I'm going to lower the temperature. So the temperature is the actual light. And you can see it's getting orange. So this uses Kelvin, right? So IES, IES. And then the temperature, this is Kelvin, so you're getting the value of the color. So if you want like 5500, you get that from there. If you don't know where these values come from, you can literally look up any light spec. So let's say I don't know, sconce lights. And you can go to, I don't know, let's go Crate and Barrel. Let's see if they're gonna hook us up. Okay, it's lighting calculation exact when using um it's tough to say exact. Like I haven't done a full blown analysis. I would say it's close. I would not say if you're a lighting designer, use D5 for like light calculations. Like if you're trying to meet code requirements or for anything, like it'll be close enough, but don't use it for that. It's like a liability thing. So yeah, so what I'm looking for right now is my yeah, exactly, Jennifer. Like I wouldn't, because it's not designed for like exact, because lighting calculations they actually get like really crazy with like the bounces and everything. So that's why I would use it for approximation, not really and of course, you know what? Let me just look up a light bulb. That's easier. All right, so let's say I've got, let's go with this. Yeah, so Eduardo, I wouldn't, like, you could use it for like the lumens, like for your output of your bulbs and everything, but I wouldn't tell your client, hey, it's going to look identical to this. Like you don't want that kind of liability. But this is what I was talking about, the color temperature. So I can grab this and I can see, okay, this is 2700K and it's 340 lumens, right? So like that's okay. You could plug that in there and it'll be approximate, but I wouldn't say like I wouldn't stamp it and say it's 100% going to look like this because there's just some limitations to how light is calculated. So anyways, now that we've got our temperature in there and everything, the important thing is you see that I've got this like cyan orb thing. This is called the attenuation radius. This is like your area of influence. So what that means is as I expand this, you see how the light starts to pour out. So you can kind of see right here, if I lower this, you don't see the light, but if I increase it, it starts to come out. So that's what that guy's doing. So you obviously want this to be, within reason, as big as you need it to be. So that looks nice. I'm getting that nice warm glow that I was talking about. You see that? So that's what I want to do. And now I want to copy this. So I'm going to give you guys a little pro tip here. If you hold down Shift and you drag out either in an arrow or this guy, your axes guy, you'll make a copy. So check that out. I'll do shift again. And look at that. So I'm getting my nice, whoops, my nice warm lights. I'll do shift again. And I'm just going through the house. Look at that. Look at that glow. That's what I'm talking about. Beautiful. So little pro tip, if you guys are feeling a little crazy, is if you hit T on your keyboard, this is your top-down view. If you ever get lost in terms of your views, you can hit your camera settings, and you could do top, you could do perspective, you could do isometric. We'll talk about that in a bit. Front, back, but then most importantly is if needed, you could switch to wireframe, and this makes it a little bit easier. I know it looks crazy, but a little bit easier for you to like place lights in a way because you could see this is where that window wall is. So I know I want to kind of be within there. So little pro tip. And now Arnav, are the size values in the same units my model is in? Are the size values? I would say probably not. I feel like it's probably using like a D5 scale. Can light beam reflect through a glass? Yeah, so the caustics, yeah, exactly. The caustics will give you that kind of that look. I don't know if you saw that with the pool before, but you can add caustics and everything to your scene. So for anyone who missed the caustics thing, watch this. If I drag this light over and I turn that on caustics, and then I turn on my my pool water caustics. Yeah, you could see. Let me turn on. You see that? That's caustics. So if you want that, that's really cool. Yeah, I actually kind of like the light here. So good call there. Maybe I lower the intensity. Kind of like a pool lighting. All right, how do you change the scale of the light sphere? Oh, so the scale, it's actually this guy, the attenuation radius. So this is your area of influence, right? So if I lower it, it's changing that orb. So we got that. So you see now it's affecting the jacuzzi, but before it wasn't. So that's what that guy's doing. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. All right, so now I'm just going to copy this guy around. And you can see I'm above my ceiling here. I actually don't need it here. Yeah, caustic is for reflections and bounce lighting and all that. I noticed I missed this soffit here, so I'm just going to grab this. Let me grab my pool material and paste that there. I grabbed the, oh, I keep grabbing water. Let me grab that. Oh, no, 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 no. Let me paste that back here. Perfect. All right, awesome. Yeah, so that we love that glow. That looks great. Um, okay, so we got our lights, and now check this out. I can toggle them on and off. So before, when I was rambling about scenes and everything, if I have a scene, I'm gonna make two scenes right now. One with lights on, one with lights off. I can turn off my lights layer and update this scene. And now, look at that. This is how you basically do options. So you could do day night, you could do option one, option two. So look at that. So that's why you use layers and scenes. They're best friends, right? So we've got that. So now that we have all that, I don't think I have any other areas that need light. I mean, if you want to do the back of the building, you know, bonus points to you, that's totally fine. I'll do that real quick. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, that looks great. That looks just like our model. And I'll add one right in here. And I think that's above the ceiling. Yep. Yeah, there we go. That looks great. Awesome. All right, cool. So now that we got that, we can import some context. So context in D5, I don't need this anymore actually. Context in D5, there's actually two ways of doing. Actually, there's three ways. There's like the old-fashioned way where you model the context and you bring that in, but there is the OpenStreetMap integration and Cesium. So City, I don't remember if this is part of Community or Pro. I don't remember, but what this can do is it can actually grab a point off of a map and import that data. It's similar to how Cesium works. If you haven't seen Cesium, you don't need to do this. I'm just going to show you because I still think it's like the coolest thing ever, but you can actually use like um textured Google Maps 3D data. So watch this. So if I just like pull in this little side tangent, you don't have to do this, but I want to show you how like I think this is the coolest thing ever. Look at this. I'm loading in Manhattan. Look at that. Look at that. Like this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So cesium is there. Look at that. It's amazing. So just pointing that out there. If you need like textured models, that's how you would do that. I would use cesium. We use it all the time. Yeah. Wow. Agreed. It's so cool. Um, so I'm gonna delete that. Bye, cesium. I love you. There's the younger brother called OpenStreetMaps. Still cool, but um not as fun. It just uses yeah. So Arnav, that cesium was right here, and then you basically just do that. Okay, so Walter, the right now Cesium is for teams, but it is coming to Pro. So I would think in D5 2. I guess 12 or 3, I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be that. Um, so so yeah, so you've got that there. There's a little bit of setup, but it's really cool. Um, so there you go. So we got that. So again, Cesium, very cool. So the other way is OpenStreetMap, which is uses this. I don't want to pull in this guy's. Well, I guess we could do. I want to see if. Sorry, there's a. Let me see if I can get this guy's neighborhood. It's a little creepy. I think it's Colorado Country Club. All right, we're gonna go we're gonna go on a little side tangent here. I want to say it's like the El Dorado Country Club. What was it? Indian Wells. Yeah, check this out. So this is like where the house is. It's near here, and the house itself, like I think it's a little creepy, but anyways, the house itself is like somewhere around here. But my point is, you can actually pull in this data. I think it's actually right here. It's funny, the circular like bit really stands out. So I could grab the coordinates, I think. Yeah, which is that. And I think I should be able to plug this in. Okay, so I pulled that in and I was having this issue last night. Okay, good. Now it's working. So here I can actually zoom in and try and find our area. Unfortunately, since I don't have the exact address of the house, it makes it a little trickier. Actually, can I take the address of the house? Oh, I can. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. Um, yeah, all right. It's probably not going to give me the exact one. Okay, that's fine. So we can completely like wing this. So what I like to do is I zoom out and I try to find. I switch to satellite and I try to find like landmarks. And when I'm talking about landmarks, I'm talking about like bodies of water and large interstates. So I've got this kind of like intersection here and a flat spot, and then it goes down. And then I can use that to kind of gauge where it is here. So that's that flat spot, right? So it's like somewhere around here is my point. And I can make a little selection. And I want to say it's maybe this guy. This is where it's a little tricky. Yeah, that looks about right, right? Yeah, I think that is that. Yeah. Nice. So I'm gonna grab this guy and I'm gonna hit import. And then this is gonna import the OpenStreetMap. Now, OpenStreetMap, it's a massing model. Okay. So as you can see here, but that's not bad because it is this is a stylized session. So because of, availability of data and everything, sometimes houses will appear. It's also scale wise. Like if a building is not tall enough, it won't appear. So you could see like it looks completely flat. So let's just find a random area. When I was doing some prep for this, I was like pulling random areas from Virginia, and Virginia seemed to give a good amount of detail and some houses and everything. So let's see. And it could be anywhere. We're just gonna plug this house in, and make it work. And let's see if we've got any houses. But when you do OpenStreetMaps, you can customize the road, the site, and the buildings themselves, which is kind of nice. So you can do like simplified colors and everything, or textures. Okay. I'm just going to, let me just save because now I'm getting paranoid. Okay, let's try that one more time. City. Hello. Hmm. I think it's mad because I pulled the previous one and I didn't like it. And it's basically, all right, let me just restart this because I think he's mad. Let me do new project real quick. You don't have to do this. If you're able to import, a city, a random city, that's totally fine. Go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna just reopen that so I can reset the map because I do want to show you how to do that because that's kind of like the whole point of what we're doing here. But yeah, cesium is sick. Like because of like how KPF works in terms of being global and everything. The ability to get a textured map without having to like buy these 3D models, very, very cool. Yeah, I wish there was like a better zoom function. Totally agree. As you can see, like that's why I was kind of struggling before to get like a perfect landmark. But like you can zoom, but like I don't think you can put in exact addresses. It seemed like it was having problems with that. So let me try importing this. Let's see. Please work. Topography. So you can in Cesium. Cesium is actually amazing because you can bring in all these different data layers. Like I just picked four random ones, but you could also do Cesium and it'll bring in world terrain as well. So you could, if you go to city, this isn't editable, which is bizarre to me. And then it doesn't pick up coordinates either. So I wish you could put in coordinates. It would make my life easier, but that wasn't there. And of course, we got another site with no houses. Of course. Okay. Let's try one more time. If anyone finds a neighborhood, let's go with Victoria. Yeah, let's go with a city here. Okay, you know what? The house is gonna live somewhere over here now. So the these houses or these buildings, for example, the cool thing about this integration is you can actually tweak it like data wise in terms of how tall the houses are. Um, you can do a random elevation and then you can, scale these down, which is kind of fun. And then you can obviously like tint them as well. Um, yeah, Walter, I don't know if this feature, the city is pro or not. I don't know off the top of my head. But definitely let me know or confirm. But yeah, no way to put in the coordinates. So right now I'm just moving the city over because I don't want to mess with my buildings data in terms of like the layout and everything. So let's do something like this. Is that gonna fit? And we'll do this. Yeah, we're making it up. I think Cesium is gonna come to Pro in the next update, like the 2 point whatever update, 2.11, 2.12, or whatever they call it, right? But yeah. So we've got this here. These buildings, you can toggle them on and off, and I hate that it doesn't fit there. It's gonna drive me nuts. Okay, let me rotate this. Choo, 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 choo. Okay, and then our house. Yeah, depending on the location you chose, you might have an easier or harder time than me right now. We could do something like that. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Then we could rotate it some more. You can plug in coordinates here or rotations here if you want. Cool. So now that we've got that here, this is all editable, like I was saying. You can't do eyedropper on it. So what you have to do is actually click it and then you can play with it. So you can make it opaque if you want it to be glassy. You can also upload a texture map if you want that. So you got a couple options here in terms of the style that you're going for this diagram. Yeah, Walter. Cesium right now is only for teams, but it will come to what's it called? Pro at some point. So here I'm just like playing with the coloring of everything. You've got your parks here, you've got the ground. I'm just going with like a light palette here. Again, I don't want it to, overpower my project or my building. My building is my focus here. So now that I've got like, a basic site in here, I'm just going to position this a little bit better. It's not going to be perfect, but I do want some context nearby. Okay. Prasanna, that is a question for Jingjing Wu. I don't know how long the reviews take. Okay, cool. So now that we've got this here, let's talk about adding some entourage and all that. Entourage like being trees and everything. And let me just rotate this a bit. Okay, perfect. Cool. And yeah, for the buildings, totally up to you if you want to do glassy or not. Doesn't matter. It's really up to the aesthetic you're going for. But I'm just going for like something that doesn't like take away from my building. So that's why I'm going super simple. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's talk about vegetation. Go save. So vegetation, we've got a bunch of different ways of handling this. You can go to these tools. You can, use the brush tool, the scatter tool, and the path tool. So I'm going to show you a little bit of everything. So let's start with pathing. So there's essentially some hedges in the back of the project and around here, and a bunch of palm trees. So I'll show you some photos of that real quick. There we go. You got your palm trees here. You've got your shrubs and everything. So we'll place some palm trees. We'll place some stuff in the front, and I'll show you how to do that stylized. So in one of the recent D5 updates, they actually expanded the whole library to have stylized assets. So so if you go over here to path right here, and you go from point A to point B, it's going to ask for a content. And this is something to watch out for. So if you were to go ahead and do this, it's basically going to only give you the nature assets. It won't give you the stylized assets, and that's actually what we want. We want these like stylized trees everywhere because they're really beautiful. So if I try to click it, see how it's not adding it into the content library. So what you have to do, only for assets that aren't what's it called? Aren't like dedicated for nature, you can go to custom paths right here. So let's go to path, custom paths. And we're just going to draw one from here to there. And now when I click any of these guys, you see how it added my tree in? So I can add a bunch of these. Let's see what else I've got. I just want something that looks a little shrubby. We'll go with these two. That's fine. So right now it doesn't look like anything else is here because we need to change some of our settings. So I'm going to hit done. We've got our path there. And now I can choose the density, right? Look at that. I can play with the random rotation. I can play with the random spacing between them and the random scaling. So I'm going to play with this, and then I'm going to shrink them down a bit. Look at that. And now this is all editable. So I can go in and edit my path and move nodes around if I'm unhappy with them. So love this tool. So we're just adding some nice little shrubs there. You can play with, your scaling, of course. So pretty happy with this. Let's also add another one over here. You can just shift and copy that over. And there you go. And because it exceeds the site, I can actually just go over here to edit and bring this in. So that's pretty nifty. I'll bring that there, and then I'll turn the corner. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, so now the palm trees. We actually have a couple different palm trees to place in these like wedges in here, and then in the backyard as well. So the palm trees, I'm talking about these guys. Bop, 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 bop. And then just a view. Really? Are they really doing this now? Oh my God. Man, Arc Daily, come on. You used to be cool. Oh my God. Who cares? Uh, yeah, I'm not gonna get any sponsorships from from Arc Daily now. Oh my God. Just let me use the site. All right, so we got the palm trees in the back. We got them in here. Let's tackle that. Yeah, I wish our clients would give us more money. All right, so for the palm trees, there's a couple other ways we could do it. We could do it with pathing, we could do it with brush, we could do it individually, right? So let me just show you individually real quick, and then we'll talk about brushing as well. So I want something like this. This is cool, and I'm gonna tuck him, yeah, somewhere around here because there's like a bunch that live in these like little wedges, and I'm just gonna keep switching the assets. And then I'm going to show you a little trick in case you don't switch the assets and you just copy them around like this. Okay. So here I was lazy and I copied a bunch around, right? But it doesn't look good because they're all samey. So you actually have a bunch of ways to fix this. You can actually go over here to this, I call it a crown, replace from assets. And this is a way to hot swap an asset out. So I'm just going to put this bushy tree just so there's like visual contrast. So that's a one way to swap out assets, right? I'm going to delete that. These guys, since they're just the same asset, I'm going to hold control and click to add it to my selection. And these guys right over here give you random rotation, right? Random size and random location. So that's another way to mix it up if you don't want to do that manually. If you want to do it manually, when you click an asset and you hit V on your keyboard, you switch between scale and your rotate move gizmo. So it takes longer, but just use the random jitter function I was showing you guys. So we've got that there. Aha. So Irina is calling me out. I'm got bad model hygiene. So this is what I do. So to be a good D5er, I'm gonna make a new layer called vegetation. And here, because I know all these plants are called low poly, I can actually just search here or filter, right? So I'm gonna select all these guys. Oops. So I'm shift clicking top to bottom, and I'm just going to move this to vegetation. You could also like drag it, but I don't know. That freaks me out. So I don't drag it. So I'm going to move that there. Um, these guys on the path, you see how they're on lights? This guy, if you're going by the filter method, you need to put custom path here, and then they'll come up. Okay. So let's move that to vegetation. Good job with hygiene. But you can see like how quick it is. So that's why it drives me nuts when I open up a file and there's no layers because it literally takes like 2 seconds. Oh, okay. If low poly, oh, I didn't realize that. Ah, crap. They're all pro. Okay, well oh, that's annoying. That's a bummer. Well, yeah, okay, not all. Yeah, if it's pro, if it says pro there. Okay. Yeah, you scared me. I thought they were all. Um, okay, cool. But a lot of them are. Okay, and then to create a new layer, just hit this add layer button, this plus button. Um, okay, cool. So we got that. So one thing I'll point out, when I click on these stylized assets, if you look over here, you can actually change the color. So if you want to go with like a fun pastel-y look, you could go with a light green or make your own color. It won't override this color, so you can always return. You can also go with a wood, but obviously like remove the tint. So again, this is where you guys can have fun. Like if you want to go with like a wood look, which is kind of fun, go for it. I support your decision. That's totally fine. It's kind of fun. Um, yeah, I actually kind of like that look. I like the consistency of like the woods with the house. Or you could go with again pastel green. Does not matter. Okay. So I'm just gonna scale these down. Perfect. And because I did all this work already, to what's it called? Um, to change the material and everything, I'm just gonna shift copy and then I'm gonna rotate them around. I'm gonna delete this guy. I'm just making, my own version here. And I'm going to plug this guy in here as well. Look at that. There you go. Cool. So we got all that. Look at that. We got our palm trees coming in. And now let's talk about brush. So brush is another amazing D5 tool where you can actually paint a bunch of different assets, but it's limited to like actual assets. But I do want to, point it out because it is like a useful tool. So like you can paint on a surface, like if I lower the density and I click there, you see how they're coming through? So that's one way of doing it. Unfortunately, the brush tool only supports like native nature, not stylized assets. So for that stuff, that's why we're like manually placing it or using what's it called? Or using the path. So pathing, it supports all that. So we're just making up our background here. So I'm just gonna put a like a I don't know, like a border of palm trees right here. We go to content. Let's go over to stylize, low poly vegetation. I'm gonna grab a bunch of these guys. Anything that looks palm tree-y. Okay. We'll add all that in. And now watch what we can do. We can hit done. We can boost our density. We're gonna boost our random rotation, our random offset, right? Our random scaling, and our overall scale. So now when we go down here, look at that. Check that out. Beautiful. And if these buildings are distracting you, you can always double click them and you can hide them as well. They are, all editable. So pretty nifty. Boom. All right, cool. So we like that. We got our vegetation there. Let's talk about people and cars. So same idea. You can go to assets. You can go to low poly characters. And if you want, you can start putting people in your scene. They can walk around, they can be sitting. Let's say we've got this looks like a kid, maybe he's playing in the grass. Got that. And check this out. So here I can make it a silhouette. So this is kind of like the I don't know, like the PNGs, the solid colors. You could do that. So I can go with like a dark color, or you could go with a solid color. If you're working for big, you're used to like making these bright colored characters. You can make them anything. You can make them wood grain. Obviously, remove the color if you don't want it. You can copy them around. You can place them. You've got so many options. So you can place people anywhere. So, take some time. We'll have this dude jogging. That's cool. It adds scale to the project. That's the whole point of adding these little people. It makes it look like it's habitable, and it also looks like it's human scale and all that. So we got like a little mother watching her son, and then we've got some dudes jogging, and I don't know, this creep taking a photo. Well, I guess it's a nice piece of architecture, so maybe it makes sense. You can do the same thing with cars and trucks and everything. So if you want, you know, that you can place a car, you can rotate it, and it's the same thing. You can change the color and everything. So you've got all that. All right, cool. So this is looking great. So we've got all this. We're doing great on time too. So we've got our assets, and now let's talk about some camera settings and all that. But I'll give you guys like a minute to continue placing assets and answer questions because I need some water. Okay. All right, so now camera settings. So first things first is let's make a new scene. You can either do like a shot like this, like an isometric like this, or like this, and we'll fine tune it. Or if you want to do perspectives, you could do something like that. I don't care. Eric, to place a single tree, just go to assets and then click your object and just single click just from assets and it'll drag it out. Okay, so let's set up something like this. So I'm gonna do new scene. And I'm going to go and enter my camera settings. And I want that isometric view. So I'm actually going to go right over here and hit isometric. And look at that. So now I get that beautiful isometric look. So that looks great. I'm gonna play with the camera a bit more. That looks awesome. And now I can play with all of my camera settings. So I'm gonna hit update scene. This is that auto exposure thing that I was talking about. Be careful of that. You have different projection modes. So you've got parallel projection. So this is like how you do, like any 2D elevations or diagrams. You could do that. You could do 2-point perspective. That's not going to look like anything right now. So let me switch to this view over here just to show that because it's actually really important you know what these are. So here, if I go to parallel, this is that 2D mode I was talking about. And then this is 2-point perspective. That makes all your verticals perfectly straight. I switch to perspective. You see when I look down, there's like some distortion. The columns like bow out. But when I do 2-point perspective, all the verticals are straight. That's like typical architectural photography. So that's why you do that. So makes your buildings look nicer. All right, so we've got that. I'm gonna switch back to parallel. And then I've got my aspect ratio. So this is like how the photo's taken. We got 16:9, we've got 4:3. You've got a bunch of different options. It really depends on your project and what makes sense. Then you've got camera clipping plane. This is if there's something in your face that's like in the way, this will chop it out. And then we've got our exposure settings and all that. So that's all good. Let me update this. Okay, that's looking good. And now we have all our post-processing effects. So this is where you could do like lookup tables. This is where you could do more exposure settings, contrast, right? You've got a lot of functionality here. You can play with the highlights, so any white spots, the shadows, the white balance, if you want to be warmer or cooler, right? You can always right-click to reset, play with the bloom, right? But really, for us, the most important thing here is AO and outline. So AO is ambient occlusion. So you can play with how much shadow you want added to your scene. The shadows will just make the scene look a little bit more grounded. It's more about the context shadows. So when you do this, AO overlay and preview, it adds the shadow layer on top. So it's very, very subtle, but it's a great way to just ground all your assets. So I highly recommend having that on. And this is basically how much, it's almost like an opacity slider. The higher the value it is, the more shadow there is. Then there's outline mode. And then this is what gives it that outline sketchy look. You can play with the line color, right? If you want to go stylized and go with like all white, it's kind of like a pretty cool look. You can do line width, so that changes the thickness of your line weight. And you can do this, which will change width by distance, which will dynamically change the line width based on the camera distance. So if there's a super fat line, it's not gonna be super fat when it's like 3 miles away. It'll thin it out. So that's a nice scale thing to have there. But very easy to tweak this and get that there. You can also toggle on a background, which in my opinion is just like a color overlay. So I call this like old school CAD mode. So if you wanted to look like black and white, you could do this. And I say this because like we used to do, black backgrounds, white line work, to make it a little bit easier to see and easier on our eyes. But you can see, look at that. We've got this awesome like technical looking diagram. You could also do like a color if you want. Or if you want to go for that blueprint look, you could do something like that. So very easy to do that. Another thing I would recommend adding, I'm going to turn this off. Right under outline mode, there's this guy called individual inner contour, and that's going to add some more line work. So you see, pay attention to the tiles here, tiles in the trees. See how there's like more lines? If you want that look, you could totally go for it. Here I'm kind of playing with like the white and the black, which is kind of fun. I never expected to do that, but it's fun. That's what we're here for. We're here to experiment. Here's a better view of that. So black is the individual contour and white is the original. It's kind of nice. I mean, it's like a actually, if I did like a gray, look at that. Now you got like a nice hierarchy. That's not a bad look. That was a total accent there. Let me turn off this tree here. Where is it coming from? Of course, the tree doesn't want to be selected, but let me make a new scene. because I actually really like this now. Definitely not intentional. If you want to like see a preview because you don't want all these like icons in your face, you can always go to display and turn layers off. So I can turn off a light source. I can turn off paths if they're distracting you at all. And then if you ever run into performance issues, you can always put it in smooth mode and it'll remove real-time lighting and shadows from your scene. So you've got that as well. You also have clay mode, which we're not going to be able to visualize when we have this on, but this is just gray. Yeah, you see that? So it's gray with light and transparency. So like if you just want a simple white model, you can put it in clay mode. So it's kind of like having the ambient occlusion on. So that's a pretty cool look. So you got options. That's my point. You can do all this in D5 and it's not actually difficult to do at all. Okay. So any questions so far on like the stylizing um part? No? Okay. Well, that's hello, can you show how you do the blueprint? Yeah, so blueprint style. So all I did was what happened here? Over that. If you go under effect and you go down to outline mode and you turn on background, and obviously, your colors for your outlines, but it all lives under outline mode is my point. Okay, and then next question, how do you remove the site that is irregular to the actual city block? So what you could do is a lot of this is editable. So you can go ahead and um, edit this. If you click any of this, you can turn things on and off. You can turn the whole city off if you want it to be a cleaner look, or you can like move. Let me go here. Let me double click. So you can edit that, you can hide it, you can move it. Um, this isn't like perfect because it's not the actual street, but like I would probably hide a bunch of this. Um, but yeah, there's no like good way to move the spline of the street, if that makes sense. You're better off like having the actual what's it called? The actual site modeled for that. Yeah, because you can't touch this. This is because it's like an import. You could probably hide it, but not edit. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's go back to our scene here and let's talk about some of the other features. So we've got all that. The other way, if you don't want to do, a diagram and you just want like a perspective, you can switch it to perspective mode. And now you can play with, your ratios, you could play with your focal length. So if I wanted to do something like this is a pretty cool shot, like a nice nifty 50 shot. I'll sync that, and then I could do depth of field, which is pretty cool. So depth of field is what's going to let you focus on an object. So let's say I want to set the focus to be the boy. If I left click him and then right click to set that off, and I increase the blur, it's tough to see, but the stuff closer to me is going to start to blur. Let me get a little closer here. I'll do set focus again. And you see how this is blurred? So this is how you're mimicking a camera. So this is great for these like really up close shots. And this is also why there's always like when you look at renderings, there's always like a tree in a corner framing the view. It helps with, composition and, viewing of the image. So this is all blurred out. So make sure you're using this. Only appears in perspective because there's depth. In parallel, there is no depth. So anyways, so we got that. It's awesome. Some great scenes. So then the next thing is before we talk about animations, I do want to bring up the section plane again. This is where you can go and like make a rendered floor plan if you want. So look at that. So you got your floor plan here. You could just hit T on your keyboard and there you go. If you spent the time doing the interiors, of course, you'd have a rendered floor plan, which is pretty sweet. So you got that. You also have the section cube, which we talked about. And now let's talk about the animation, and we're pretty much done. Let me see where this bush is coming from. It's gonna drive me nuts. When you use the brush tool, it hosts it on the actual mesh. Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna turn that off. There you go. So it's not like an object in the outliner, it's on the model itself. So that's why it can be a little tricky to find sometimes. So I'm going to show you a quick, easy way to animate this like I was showing you before, where it was cascading and everything. It's a pretty sweet hack. So if you go over to video, this is your timeline. So how this works is you save a camera view and like you could grab them from here, right? Or you can film them yourself. So I'm just going to show you an example. I'm going to go out here and I'm just going to hit add camera view. And I can move the camera forward and add to the view. So if I move my camera forward and then hit that, it's going to take 3 seconds to go between the two. So if I scrub it back and hit play, this is how I make an animation, right? So it's as simple as that. So if I want it to take longer, I type in 7, and now it's going to take 7 seconds to go from point A to point B. Look at that. Nice and slow. So if you want to do a jump cut, so a jump cut meaning going from camera A to camera B, all you would have to do is just hit, just move your camera and hit create shot from current view. And now look at this. I'm going to get a jump cut from here to here. And then if I want, I can move, the camera over here and so on. And now I've got this. So now the question, how do you make cars and people move? Those assets I was talking about that are dynamic, those people will move if they're moving. The stylized people don't move because they're just stylized assets. But if I had anyone or thing on a path, just for this exercise, if I were to grab a vehicle path, just to show you guys this, and just grab a car, let's grab the Land Rover. See how this is moving now? I can also make it go two-way if I want. One of the benefits of the path tool, and I can also do a dual. Yep. So check this out. So if I go to my scene now, my video scene, you see how these guys are going to start playing? Yeah. So it's got to be a moving asset on a path. So Ibrahim does transit. No, not at all. You could actually just do like a save as, or you could just duplicate your scene here and just swap out the materials. Like that's really all we've been doing, right? It's like really the materiality that we'd swap out. But yeah, you don't have to start from scratch. So now that I've got all this, I can start playing with my shots. I can start playing with my phasing. If you want to ever update a scene, like let's say, for example, I don't like where this camera angle is, I can actually just move out and hit update. So it's the same way as your regular scenes go. I can also edit the transitions. So you see how it slows down? That's called easing. I personally hate easing because you don't see easing in film. You usually see linear cuts. So I just switched this to linear and linear, and now it's going to do a straight jump cut. Yeah, just like that. So if you want to do, any exports, you would just go over here to render, and then you can export out with different resolutions. You could do different frame rates. Personally, if I'm delivering something to a client, I usually do 30. If I had infinite time and budget, I would probably do 60 frames per second. And that's basically, think of it as like 30 renders per second. So if it takes you 1 minute to do one rendering, it would take you 30 minutes per second. Okay, so that's 30 minutes per second. So that's why I say that, because if I had unlimited time, yeah, I would do like 60 or 120 FPS, but it takes time to render. And a minute is probably pretty extreme for a scene like this. Probably be, maybe 30 seconds or less. But again, simple math I'm trying to put out there. Okay, so can we have 3D text in our clip? Not 3D text personally, or yeah, I guess personally or truthfully, I usually export out and then I bring it into Premiere, and then I just add a text in the bottom left corner or bottom right, and then I do that there, and then I do like more transition stuff. I play with like the speed of clips sometimes. I usually do a proper Premiere pass. I also do color grading there. You could also do color grading in D5. It's just like old habits die hard, and it's like and since I deal with video so much, I'm just used to going into Premiere. But you can do a lot of this in D5, of course. You can also export out as a sequence, which will render out those images one by one, and then you'd have to stitch them together in Premiere. But yeah, Premiere is a video editing software. Adobe makes it. It's pretty simple to use, but it's how you stitch together. Like when I make my YouTube videos, um, you can basically take some B-roll, use some screen share, talking head, and stitch it together, do text effects and all that. Yeah, or DaVinci Resolve. And I'm pretty sure DaVinci is free, and the free version's really, really good. And like you don't even need the pro version or something. Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, if you don't want to commit to Adobe's monopoly schemes, you don't need to buy Premiere. It's just I have Premiere. That's just my life. um, okay, so now that we got that, let's talk about yeah, CapCut, same thing. CapCut, Premiere, Camtasia, whatever version of video software you want to use, as long as you can cut, split, fade, transition, doesn't matter. It all comes out to the same thing. So now let's get into phasing. So phasing basically like pulling apart this building. So right here, there's a switch view button. I recommend clicking it. Makes it a little bit easier to view what we'll do with phasing. There's also plenty of buttons here to play and go next and forward and backwards and all that, which is useful. But remember, all the work we do is saved to this one clip. So I can save this as phasing. And I bring this up because this is like its own scene. So you can have a whole nother clip for like interior fly through and then a whole nother clip for exterior fly through. So that's what that would look like. And you could switch between them and so on. So now for phasing, what I like to do is I want to click up my building, right? And because of the export method, like this is the whole brilliance of the export method, I can actually in like I think like 2 clicks phase out the whole project. Watch this. So I go over to template and right over here, these after clicking, your project, you can choose an animation template. So if you ever watch like HGTV and all those house renovation shows or channels and you see like things pop in and bounce and all that, that's what this is. So if I click rise, now it's asking me what do I want to do or select. I'm going to click the whole house. And now it's using the folder structure or the layer structure, interior architecture and landscape. I'm going to hit done. And it should, in theory, work. So if I do this, yeah. So you see how it's like lifting the pieces up and down. So let me go back in there and I can play with the time it takes, the distance it takes. I can also go with like sub objects. Like right now it's moving the interior and the landscape and all that all at the same time. You can definitely play with that all under the templates. But the point is it's not that difficult to use. You can also play with how long it takes, and then which objects go first. So pretty cool that all this is like easily accessible, and then you can always flip it. So I can copy this and paste this, and then go reverse as well. So yeah, so I'll show you guys from the beginning for anyone who missed that. So to start, what I like to do is you can go over, if you want to do it one by one, just so you have a little bit more control, you can just click like interior and then go to template, and then you could do rise and then just click interior. And now only these guys will be affected. So I'm going to go in here and call this interior. So this is if you want full control. So now I've got interior popping in and out. Okay, so now that's sequential. And I don't want interior to be the first one, right? Because that's a little weird. So I'm gonna go into the architecture part and I'm gonna click template and I'm gonna go rise. And let's see what we could do here. Let's go with architecture, walls, windows. Yep, that all looks good. And now I'm gonna call this architecture. So if you wanted to go one step further and just do the walls and then just do the windows, you can definitely do that. But now look what will happen. So all those components were going. And what I can do is I want it to be visible at the end as well. I want all these to be visible at the end. So now I have full control over who goes first and where. Look at that. And now the interior comes through. So as you can see, like a couple clicks. Can I make object structure manually instead of export plugin? Can I? Yeah, if you manually save things out, yeah. But I would definitely use export just to save you time. But now that you have it broken out individually, you can easily just move these around and then play with the timing and everything to get you your desired look, of course. So we've got that. And that's pretty much how you automate that. And that's the beauty of that. So now if I wanted to do the exploded axon, I could do it in here with all the components, or I could go over to my scene over here. Just gonna let's grab this guy. And let me exit out of video mode. And I'm just gonna make a new scene, and we'll just call this exploded. But yeah, again, you could do it through phasing or you could do it through here. So if you want full control, I do kind of recommend doing it manually, because I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit easier to control. So I could go here and I can grab the roof and I could literally drag the roof up to here. And then I could grab, my walls, and I could bring my walls like this. And then I could bring the windows and doors, and I'm just moving it up and up. I think if I were to do this like, in an actual real world setting, probably zoom out a little bit more, and play with the roof height, the walls a little bit more like that. That way there's some more spacing between everything. And then you can go and then save that, and then you kind of have your views. The only downside is it does save the transform locations of the house. So it's like if end goal is like the exploded axon, this is probably okay. But if you do want it to be flexible enough where your house isn't like fully exploded, then you'd have to use phasing, if that makes sense. Phasing being under the video setting, and then playing with this and then getting it in the right spot. So a couple different options. Yeah. So then once you're like happy with everything and you've got it in a good spot. Okay, so before I get into that, I'll repeat the exploding part. So you can either do it through phasing, right? So template, select the object. Can you repeat the method so it looks like the picture now? Yeah, so that's what I'm saying here. So you've got phasing. I've broken it out so the architecture is one component, interior is another. So you've got this here, like that. Right. So, Rakat, that's the issue with doing it manually rather than phasing. So that's why I'm giving both options. So I control Z to reset. But if you want it to be dynamic, you can go through here and then just play with the distance of each element. But I would go one by one. So like I'd probably break up the roof so it's its own object. So to do that, I would go over here to roof. So this is like full breakdown. So watch this. We'll do it the right way. We'll do full breakdown. I'll click roof, right? So this is all the roof elements. I'm gonna hit done, and then I'm gonna make the distance. We'll make it really, really high. We'll make it like 50. Okay. And I'm gonna call this roof. And now as a sanity check, it's gonna pull the roof up. Okay, one by one. So then let's do the walls. So I'm gonna click walls. I'm gonna do template, do rise. We'll do walls again, and then hit done. So now I'm gonna call this walls. And I want a little bit of overlap between them. So now we're gonna get roof and walls. And I don't want them to disappear at the end. So I'm just gonna keep that check marked. And now look. So I'm just gonna keep repeating this for each object. And of course you can make it go higher if you want. So if you want this to go 25, that's totally fine. But you can say it's just a matter of tweaking these values. There you go. And now I can do the same thing with columns. I'm gonna do columns, template, do rise. We'll click columns and then hit done. Okay. And now let's make this 20. So Alana, all of this came from the export of the source file that we imported. Yeah, it's from the modeling. It does it automatically from the modeling software. You go through the plugin and you hit export, and then it does this grouping for you based on the layers. And this is all coming from the Rhino file. Okay, and then we've got our walls and doors. So I'm gonna move these in. Okay, where is it? Wall. What is it? Windows and doors. Yeah, windows and doors. Template. Rise. Windows and doors. And now it's adding all those objects. And we want it to disappear. Okay, great. Windows doors. And now let's see what this looks like. So you can see it's literally stripping apart the whole project. Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. And then you can do the same thing with the interior. I changed the group within Rhino after applying. Yeah, yes. As long as you're re-exporting, it'll all come over. No problem. And now let's just do the interior, and then that will be like the full explosion of the house. Okay, interior. So you can see it's a little tedious, but once you do it, it's a pretty cool feature. So now we go boop 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 boop, taking the roof apart, and we're taking our columns, our windows, doors, interior. Pop, pop, pop. There you go. So now, yeah, so now Irina, to your point, can we flip it? So all I'm gonna do, actually, can I do this? Can I do bulk? Yeah. So Irina, if I remember correctly, I can just select all these, and then I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna hit Control V. No, I gotta do it one by one. All right, Control C, Control V. And do you see how I have interior twice? I'm gonna hit reverse, and now watch this guy. So interior went up, pause, interior is gonna go down. Bump, 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 bump. Go reverse. Oh, the reverse order. So then I gotta make this. Let me make this drop. Sorry. Let me double check this. Exactly. So I had to switch it from rise because I forgot I was on rise. Now I gotta switch to drop. So you see how that's going down? All I did there, just to show you the drop in case that wasn't clear. I click this. Click right here, switch template, and switch to drop. Okay. You could also do ascend, descend. You could do all that. I believe there's also like, what is it? Explode just explodes it. Yeah, completely. Yeah. Yeah. So these are all the different templates. So drop will go like that. Ascend comes through the floor. Descend comes down through the floor. I personally like these two because they seem like the most natural in my opinion. And the nice thing about drop is pay attention to how it hits the ground. Does that little bounce effect, a little jiggle. So what I would do now is I'd go one by one. I'd grab windows and doors. I'd switch this guy to drop. So I got him, switch to drop. Let's put a little bounce on. Then I click columns. Then I go here. We switch this to drop again. Then we go to walls, paste, go to drop. Oh, it did copy it. Ah, yeah, it did copy it from before. I thought it was weird that it was missing. All right. So let's get rid of this. Watch now, it's gonna mess up the whole thing. Yeah, I thought it was weird that it didn't copy it, but it's all good. Okay, and then I'm gonna copy this. I'll paste him. And we'll move roof over here and we'll do drop again. And now should be done correctly. Just gonna give everything a little bit more room to breathe. And I'm gonna extend this shot a bit. Okay, and I'm gonna lower this. Okay, and I'm gonna save. Okay, so now a lot of clicking. Pop, 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 pop. We're lifting, we're lifting. Doing beautiful lifting. Okay, now we're up top, and now we're going to start dropping. Pop, 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 pop. And it's doing the little jiggle from the bounce, which is just a fun little thing. There you go. There we go. Well, that was fun. And just make sure you've got bounce on all these. Yeah, that's pretty cool to see that come out. So let me do this. Bop, 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 bop. And the bounce is optional. I just think it's like a cool thing. Yeah, very cool. And look at that. So now that we've got all that, you can, do your exploded view or like rendering from like a setup like this, where you have probably everything set up to be exploded at the same time. So can I, yeah. So what I would do in that situation, I would hit duplicate and let me call this diagram. And when I mean at the same time, of course I spelled it wrong. I would move everything here in the same line like this. And then I would just make sure that the camera, yeah, is looking at the project. Let me switch view real quick. Yeah, that it's looking at it all at the same time and at different heights. So I'd play with like the wall distance like that. I play with the column distance, just so there's like enough distance between everything. That's what this guy is. Yeah. So now to start from the beginning for this diagram, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. So very, very cool. And then you can go ahead and save a scene for that. So let's say now you're all happy with everything. Like you want to, just get renderings out of D5. We said for the videos, you can export it out this way with render. You can also do add to render queue, which will do a batch render. So if you don't want to render it out right now, like you want to go have lunch and render 10 videos or images out at the same time, that's what that feature is for. It's this guy right up here. And you could do a batch render. But, let's say I've got an image, I'm ready to go, and it's picking up all the phasing stuff from what's been done before. So if I move this over here, I've got that, of course. So if I want to render out, all I do is I switch the image. And now from here, I can do an aspect ratio override if I want. I'm fine with the 4:3 I set before. You could see what will render versus not. Preset size. So this is resolution. 2K is totally fine. I'd say like most of my work is digital at this point or embedded in a PDF. If I'm doing a poster, like an actual print, maybe I do 4K, 6K. But for email, PDFs, 2K is totally fine. This is your resolution in terms of pixels. And then you can add a watermark, and then you can render out channels and all that. And then for channels, you could do like material ID, sky mask, transparency, AI post channel, and all that. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So let me save this, and I want to render this out just so I can show you the AI post channel, and that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna hit render, and I'm just gonna save this here. And now, Walter, could you phase in areas of the house to be built first? Yeah. So if you remember those purple sliders, I did roof first. So in theory, what you could do is if you selected all the items, you could do left wing first, and then mid area of the house second, and then right of the right wing last. That's totally up to you. It's just that's how it was grouped by like interior like walls and all that. So you would just change this in your source app. So once you render it out, you could go to open folder and look at the actual image, or you can use D5's awesome AI post-processing tool. And I'm going to double click the rendering that we have here. And I have the option of using AI to enhance it. We've got the AI enhancer, which will do like a light enhancement of like textures and everything. I'm going to render that out as well, just so you could see. This is all done on the cloud, so it doesn't matter how fast your computer is, it'll just do that offloaded. And then my personal favorite is the AI style transfer. You have all these different stylized AI post processing. It's either this guy or when you're done rendering, it'll give you a little dialogue window. So, but you can also go here AI post-processing. So watch this. I'm going to do a scale model. We'll do style transfer there, and this is going to use AI to apply that style. I'll do a marker drawing. I'm just doing all these random ones. We'll do a pen sketch. You know, D5 comes with all these like awesome built-in options. We'll do pencil as well. And let's see what else. Cartoon and watercolor. Watercolor is a good one. And so now we wait and we see what comes out. So this is another way to stylize your renderings even further. Okay, so this is the scale model. You see that? So, you know, it's not 100% perfect. It thought the pool was a car, but it is kind of cool to see it turn into wood and everything. Then this is the AI enhancer. So I'm going to zoom in. You can see it did like a little bit of a lift in terms of improving the textures and everything. If you're like anti-AI messing up your image or anything, this is a very good solution for that. What are the results of AI? So Rahan, this one won't change it as much. It'll do a very subtle change. You can also obviously, you know, change the weight if you want to do less of a lift. But the AI style transfer ones, these do like the most lift. Like here, you know, kind of like a watercolor. You can definitely like play with, you know, how much it does. You could do a sketch, of course. This one's a lot of fun. And I believe this one's under Pro as well. But look at that. That's very cool. And then this is watercolor. Yeah, watercolor came out beautiful. Oh, I love this one. Yeah, this is probably under Pro because I think most AI stuff is like let's do this. 35 person. I'm like 99% sure it's anything AI related. Unlimited access D5 AI powered. Right. So this is yeah. So I was right. So anything AI related is City Generator is a pro feature as well. But yeah, you do get a lot in the community version, of course. Um, but uh, but yeah, that's pretty much it. You can go ahead and download your image, and you got a beautiful beautiful image. Yeah. And then Eric, you can do you can't do like like traditional in painting where you select an area. But you could do their version of in painting, which selects areas for you, like the vegetation or the sky or smart retouch. Like this will actually look for specific zones that you could pick up, but it's not like typical in painting where you like brush an area, if that makes sense. But you can exclude and include objects when you're doing your enhancements. Like you can say, oh, just give me the house, or just select a selection like that. So it's, you know, you could still, you know, do that if you know what I mean, but it's not like traditional in painting. Okay. Can you import those styles? So yeah, that's a great question. The what's interesting is the stylized stuff doesn't have a reference photo, but the realistic settings do. So you can import a reference photo if it's realistic, but you can't for stylized. I'm going to submit that as feedback because that would actually be really useful if I had that option because then I could just grab like a sketch I've drawn and it matches like the Andy sketch style. Um, but but yeah, I think it's a pretty powerful tool. I mean, for especially the realistic stuff, I feel like this is what brings our rendering so much closer to, you know, outsourcing them in terms of like quality wise. You know, because real-time rendering, like they look phenomenal now, but you know, if you want like film, you know, slash cinematic quality, the AI enhancer, like this stuff really just brings it to the next level. So I really love that stuff. So we'll see what this looks like. But yeah, watercolor looks great. And you can tune all these settings. So like if you don't want as much, I don't know, watercolory, you can go to these settings and you can play with the weight. You know, if you want your structure to be untouched, you can raise that to 1 and you can submit that as well. And all of this, and then all of this will live under task. So this gets bunched up. So like this one image, all your options are here in one spot. Okay. Okay. So I'll render this out. But that's basically it for today. So we basically covered how to import, how to add lights, how to use T5, right? Yeah, look at this. This looks great. Not bad for 3 hours. Um, cool. Cool, cool. So we'll wait for this one to go and then we'll switch to the Q&A real quick. And then you guys can enjoy your Saturdays. But yeah, thank you for joining me on this. This was a fun one. Rahan's asking, how do you make it more consistent? You definitely want to play with your weights. You want to lessen your weights and increase your structure. So I'm talking about like this guy. So lessen enhancement weights, and then you want to increase your structure matching weights. Um, so, and oh wow, it's Sunday for some. Oh wow. Okay, cool. And then this is the realistic sunset approach. So kind of fun. All right. Awesome. Let me switch to the Q&A slide. But yeah, thank you again to everyone. This was great. I hope you learned something and like definitely like share this stuff whether in the PA Academy or on LinkedIn if you want to tag me. But this is my link tree. You've got links to my YouTube, my socials if you want to connect. Connect with me on LinkedIn or watch my YouTube videos. That's all there. But yeah, definitely stay in touch. Show me what you're working on and all that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Andy. This was really brilliant session. I really enjoyed it. And fun ways of moving those elements, creating animation. I think it's quite unique. And the styles, I think they're great, but there's also room for growing as well. You can add some styles from other places and etc. I think that will be also interesting.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
far, I think everything was good and great. Uh, yeah, thank you so much for everything. Guys, if you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the chat section right now or in the Q&A box. Other than that, we're almost at the end of the session. I had just last question. Andy, where are you the most responsive in social or on email or wherever? Because if people wanted to reach out to you for anything.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so like I'm always checking my YouTube comments, always LinkedIn messages as well. So if you want to reach out there, through DMs or tag me, LinkedIn is totally fine. But if you're, watching my videos and you leave a comment, I try to get back to everyone. Obviously I miss a couple, but if you have a question, I do reach out there. Yeah, but LinkedIn is probably the best, but YouTube is the best if you want, just like free Andy content. And then actually just talking about like free Andy content, just because of like the state of ArcViz and everything, in that Dropbox link, like do be sure to download like I've got a free AI guide, totally free. Make sure you grab that, take advantage of it. It's totally free. Again, can't stress that
That's
enough because
great.
yeah, like AI and ArcViz, like it's funny. There's this crazy like overlap between them, but they're also like competitive in a way. So kind of trying to make sense of it all, but it's definitely
Which
tricky.
one do
But yeah,
which one do you use mostly in your kind of daily workflow? I'm sure with the projects you mostly go probably with Archviz, but do you think AI has that kind of capability to be used in day-to-day deliverables of the projects?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it also depends on the type of project and like what you're doing. Like for example, we do like Nano Banana, like for those that haven't messed with it, the crazy thing about it is how well it understands your sentences and like the edits you want done. Like you could easily say, "Oh, make the sun come from the left or make the sun come from the right or give me a different, material palette." And it just does that and it's just like it's crazy how far it's come because to do that manually is definitely like time consuming. You could obviously do it. It's just like for someone who doesn't have this skill set, that just like saves them like 10 years of I don't know, trial and error. So that's what I mean. It's like competitive against ArcViz because it's essentially like streamlining that whole process. But yeah, Nano Banana's been insane in that regard.
Yeah, I've seen its rating as well. It's quite higher in compared to other tools, but we'll see its future. These tools are keep getting better and better every day.
I know it's really crazy. It's every week there's like something new that you need to cover, and it's constantly changing. It's very crazy.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. Maybe we should have you for another AI session in the future.
Hey, definitely. That's like what I do. It's I'm split between it's like I've got two brains. I've got the ArcViz side and the AI side. Like, on my channel, for example, a lot of what I've been doing in the past month is just like catching people up on what's going on in the AI world. For a solid year, I just did D5 tutorials, but I feel like the last month there's been so many crazy things with AI that I'm trying to update that audience on. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything. I think you're adding a lot of things to the community with the Archviz platform, and I appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for having
Uh,
me.
of course, thanks everyone for joining. It was really a great session. The videos will be available shortly on the website. Make sure to check them out inside your account in the course page. And in 2 hours, we also have another workshop starting with Prabhat from Zaha Hadid Architects. If you guys are interested, make sure to check that one out as well. And yeah, thank you, everyone. I'll see you soon in another session.
Awesome. Thank you,
Goodbye.
everybody. Bye bye.
Goodbye, Andy. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye.